All right, welcome to the regular Planning Commission meeting for Thursday, October 2nd. Danny, roll call.
Yes, thank you. Commissioner Spears.
Present.
Commissioner Pevsner.
Here.
Commissioner Pascal.
Here.
Commissioner Fireman Hunt.
Here.
Commissioner Buckles.
Here.
Commissioner Goldstein.
Here.
And Chair Desai.
Here. And at this time, can we report out of the closed session?
Yes, thank you, Chair. The commission met in closed session with legal counsel to discuss a matter of potential litigation. No action was taken.
Approval of the agenda for tonight?
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, approval of the minutes of September 18th. Do you have any comments, concerns?
I'll move that we approve those minutes.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
I'm abstaining because I wasn't there.
Okay. Okay, so at this time, audience comments. Any person may address the Planning Commission concerning any item not listed on the agenda. We welcome your participation and input. When addressing the Planning Commission, begin by stating your name and address, please, for the record, and limit your comments to no more than 4 minutes to provide for an orderly and timely meeting.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'll try to be orderly and timely. Debbie Sheridan, Valley Vista Drive. I just have a couple of comments and questions. I was told that my comments and comments of other members of the public were not rebroadcast in the Planning Commission meeting, and I'm wondering why. And I really would like to know, because I find that very disturbing. And I have a second comment, too, that I have commented upon in the past, is the lot split on Camillo at 319 and 321 Camillo has two houses going up that are extremely inappropriate. I'm wondering how they managed to pass the development services, how they got approved. I was walking my dog with my 10-year-old granddaughter today, and we were just walking by there, and she said, "Look at those houses. They don't fit into this neighborhood at all. Look at this house. This is a nice house. Look at this house. This is a nice house. These are not appropriate." When a 10-year-old can take a look at that and see how inappropriate it is, I'm just wondering, and I'm wondering if I could get an answer as to how they managed to be built. It looks like they are about 6 feet at the most from the neighbor's property, and it just is unacceptable. So I thank you very much.
Danny, do you want to?
Yeah, I could answer if you'd like. I do not know why the rebroadcast. I'd have to look into that. I don't know, Debbie. But I will look into that, and I could probably let you know when I find out why. In terms of your second question on the 319 and 325 Camillo homes that are under construction or nearing completion, the Planning Commission, well, first of all, the homes that are being constructed at 319, 325 Camillo meet the development standards that were in place at the time in which they submitted those plans. Okay. There was a change in the R1 standards, and that was in May of 2013. Yes, May of 2013. Those plans, and it became effective soon on that, in May, the new R1 standards. The previous R1 standards were in effect when those plans were submitted, and as such, they conform to all the development standards: height, setback, lot coverage, parking. All of those things have been reviewed under plan check, and they meet those standards. The difference is today, if they were built under our current R1 standards, they would not be permissible. Yeah. They would not be allowed.
Can I ask her a question about the video?
Sure.
Debbie, what do you mean your comments weren't broadcast? Yeah, it's a video stream, right? They just record the file and play it back.
Yes, that's what you would think, but I have been told that it's not only my comments, but other comments when it was open to the public. When it was rebroadcast, they were not there. We were
I mean, like
cut
they were
off.
edited out, or there was just a
Well,
glitch in the
apparently,
tape?
I didn't see it. This is secondhand information, but I found it disturbing enough so that I wanted to bring it before you tonight.
Well, I know the city manager's here. I've had a nonstop series of complaints about this broadcast system. I go in the room next door when I'm recused, and I can't watch the video. So I know, as I said we were doing the general plan, that there's a service level agreement with the provider. The service level has to be enforced. So I don't know what's going on there, but I know there are problems with the system because I can't watch the stuff. So if we could look into that, and if we're paying for a service, we should
Thank
get
you.
the service.
Yeah.
Well, everybody, I mean, you should be able to get the service. We're paying for it.
Yes, and if I may say, if it was just in the rebroadcast, I don't know if it was originally, that they couldn't, the general public that's watching at home, of which there are a substantial number of people, I don't know if they couldn't see it, but I've heard that as
This
well.
is not 21st century technology, so I think we should be able to play back a
Exactly,
video
yeah.
file.
Thank you. Thank you for your concern.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Barry Gold, live at 441 Ramona Avenue. At the last Planning Commission, during the public comment portion, I spoke for 2 minutes and 45 seconds. If you look at the recording, you will only see the last 15 seconds were recorded. Thank you.
It's a glitchy system. It's terrible.
My only comment to that would be, I know Danny's going to look into it. I'm assuming that the public wants you to look into that as soon as possible. Because I'm sure they're going to want to hear the playback of this meeting and the city council meetings also.
Okay.
All right, at this time, we'll close audience comments and open up the public hearing portion of tonight's meeting. First item, Resolution 1408, approving certificate of appropriateness for the Hart Park House.
And Leticia, just a brief, Leticia Cardoso will give a brief report on this.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. As you recall, at the September 18th meeting, the Planning Commission held a public hearing and directed staff to prepare a resolution to approve Certificate of Appropriateness 1401 that allows the addition of a 209 square foot storage room, addition to the storage room, addition to the Hart Park House, the 209 square foot storage room. And that's the Hart Park House Senior Center, located at 222 West Sierra Madre Boulevard. You have the resolution before you, and staff recommends approval of that resolution approving Certificate of Appropriateness 1401.
Do you have any questions for Leticia? No? All right. I mean, it looks like the condition that's attached to it kind of represents what we had talked about, so I don't know if we need to belabor this, but I think we're good with it, so. I'm gonna open it to public comment.
You could, yeah.
We'll open it up to the public to comment on this item. Seeing no takers, we'll close the public comment, bring it back to the commission.
And make a motion to approve the resolution.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Okay.
On to the second item for the public hearing tonight, Hillside Development Permit 1201 and Conditional Use Permit 1208, 610 Baldwin Court.
Assistant Planner Derek Purification will make the staff report on this, and there'll be a PowerPoint presentation.
And as is a custom, I'll be leaving.
Good evening, Commissioners and Chair. The item before you is for 610 Baldwin Court, also known as Lot 24. It's a hillside development permit 1201 and conditional use permit 12-08. It was continued from the September 18th meeting, which was our last meeting. Just going to go over some very quick information. The City Council considered the applicant's appeal of the Planning Commission's denial of the project and remanded the project back to the Planning Commission to address scale, bulk, and mass as provided in the Stonegate Design Guidelines D 1.1 to 1.9. That was in January 14th of 2014. At the last meeting, the applicant returned with a revised proposal. That revision included removal of the second floor deck, the 6-foot high tubular fence, and a reduction in the basement floor area. In the end, the commission did not feel that these changes were sufficient enough to address the bulk, mass, and scale per the Stonegate Design Guidelines, and provided further direction. The direction was to reconfigure and shift the second floor space and to reduce ceiling heights to minimize the second floor level massing and bulk. Here is their revised proposal. They reduced the overall height about 1 foot 6 inches. They achieved that by lowering the second floor plate from 9 feet 1 inch to 8 feet 1 inch. The roof pitch was changed, and the plate height over the garage was also lowered to 6 inches. On the second floor, I'm sorry, on the first floor, they reconfigured the stairs in the powder room. That ended up adding an additional 22 square feet on the first floor. However, on the second floor, bathroom number 2 and the hall were reduced in size. The bedroom number 3 closet and the entry were reconfigured. This yielded a reduction in 115 square feet. On the second floor, on the west or front elevation, it was moved back about 4 feet 7 inches, and on the master bedroom, on the south elevation, it was pulled up to the north about 1 feet 4 inches. This total reduction was about a total of 98 square feet. Pursuant to the HMZ, gross floor area does not include the basement. There was no change to the basement size from the September 18th meeting, any basements or any other subterranean spaces. And the project's floor area, the height, setbacks, parking, and other standards are all in compliance with the Hillside Management Zone. Here's the site plan. The footprint doesn't change too much. There's a little bit of increase here in the dining room and here in the rear patio. On the first floor plan, again, rear porch increases slightly, and the dining room pulls out a little bit to the north. The powder room and the stairs and the entrance from the motor court have changed. The entrance is now towards the west, and the powder room moved back towards the east. On the second floor plan, the bathroom has changed to a Jack and Jill. There's been reduction in size in bedroom number 2 and bedroom number 3, and the hallway has been a little reconfigured as well. Here you can tell the difference. There's about a 4 foot 7 inch setback here, or pushed back, I should say, on the front elevation as well as on the south elevation. Here's the basement floor plan, which hasn't changed from the September 18th meeting. It still includes the basement with a bathroom and a laundry room. Here's the west elevation. Again, it's been lowered about 1.5 feet from 24 feet 9 inches to 23 feet 3 inches. Again, the west elevation, this shows the plate heights on the first floor and now on the second floor. And the east elevation, south elevation, I'm sure you guys are familiar with these, and the north elevation. Tonight, the commission must determine if the new design changes adequately address scale, bulk, and mass as provided in the Stone Gate Design Guidelines D 1.1 to 1.9. Your alternatives tonight is to approve the application for Hillside Development Permit 1201 and CUP 1208 and direct staff to prepare a resolution. Deny the application for HDP 1201 and CUP 1208 and provide reasons the findings cannot be made and direct staff to prepare a resolution for denial, or continue the subject project and request further information. Staff seeks Planning Commission's direction regarding the project. I'm here to answer any questions, and the applicant also has a presentation.
Thank you, Derek. Do we have any questions for Derek?
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Adele Chang, before you again, representing the architect, and I'll be very brief. Okay, I don't know if you can see very clearly because the lights are on. What we have done is try to show you kind of in red where the previous submittal, which is here, versus this one. When we reconfigure the whole stair, as per Commissioner Desai's recommendations or suggestions, by putting it back, in order to get enough risers to have headroom, because it doesn't turn as much, it's more of a straight stair, we did end up with more risers or treads sticking out into the breakfast nook area. And in order to not have the steps be a trip hazard and so forth, we did push out a little bit. That's right here so that there's enough room. And as we were looking at the circulation and seeing how we're starting to have more and more circulation kind of going through this area, and just kind of scrutinizing how tight this was, we brought this line out a little bit, and that's the result of 22 square feet. On the second floor is where you'll see the majority of the changes. Here is the stair that it has now been, instead of coming this way and landing here at a large landing, we now are coming up this way and landing here. As a result, you can see the previous, which is this outline over here. We were able to push everything back substantially. And then we also changed from this sort of Jack and Jill, where each had their own sink zone, to one where the sinks are shared and so forth, more of a linear Jack and Jill. And we also brought in the master bedroom some. So this is the result of the square footage that was cut. Actually, it doesn't, I don't know if it shows up. In the basement, there was a slight gain in footage just because the stair, instead of coming down and ending here, it ended up coming down and ending here. In order to be able to come out and get around, we had to expand this area very slightly. It's a very minor change. It's all to accommodate the rotation of the stair at the Commission's suggestion. Exterior elevation-wise, this is what it looks like. Besides lowering the second floor plate from 9 to 8, or 9.1 to 8.1, we also lowered the pitch. You can tell there's kind of a greater sense of verticality in some of these forms, whereas here it's pressed down more. It's flatter. And then, of course, this is the outline here. we brought the plate down even on the first floor on the garage. One benefit to us, as a result of all this pushing back on the second floor, we were able to get an actual chimney here that is far away enough, more than 10 feet away from the second floor, so we can have a real fireplace with a flue, whereas before we were considering appliance fireplace. So this just shows what it currently looks like. Some of the windows were moved around. We removed another window from the garage and centered the door, just in general cleaning it up more. This is the landscape plan which you've seen, and we also took the time to kind of illustrate. This is the before on the left, after on the right. You can kind of see how much shorter it feels. And here would be if there were trees, and this is the view from above. You can kind of see there's a bigger roof here slightly with this wall pushed in. This is further back. And that's the extent of my presentation. That's as far as we got with the rendering part of it. I'm here for any questions.
Do we have questions?
No. I'll just, yeah, there was on the north side, you had the wall was kind of pushed out a little bit, and what was the reason?
Well,
Aesthetic or?
it wasn't. It was just thinking about the amount of flow of traffic in that area, and how we brought that. Let me go back to that slide. Originally, when we put in a basement, and there was a lot more function and space and so forth in the basement. We were concerned about getting enough daylight in there, so we took an aggressive cut from here. And we didn't think that much about, what was happening. Oh, yeah, that's big enough. But now the basement is smaller. We're kind of de-emphasizing it. And also thinking about this is really the main circulation in this house, is this path right there, either this way or that way, going to the basement, whatever. It felt like it could use a few more inches just for comfort. And we just noticed that because we were thinking about this zone right here and pushing this out. That was all. It's very minor. I don't think it's really even noticeable. And it's on the north side.
What's your microphone on?
It wasn't structural, though. Go ahead.
No,
Okay.
it wasn't.
In the last meeting, we discussed lowering the ceiling heights to be able to get reduce the mass.
We did do that.
Which ceilings?
We did that on the second floor.
You chose not to on the ground floor?
Yes, instead of Commissioner Hunt mentioned wanting to lower the whole thing by 1'8", by 18 inches, by 1.5 feet.
Well, what I said was take 6 inches off the first floor and 1 foot off the second floor.
Exactly.
That's exactly what I said.
Yes, yeah, that's what you said, and totaling 1.5 feet. But we looked at it, we spoke to our clients about it, and the end result was, because of the size of some of the gathering spaces, mainly this one where a family is likely to spend the majority of its time, the family, the kitchen, and the nook, all made very, very open to each other, even though each one is not overly large. But because the 3 spaces are completely open, not separated by any walls, it will have the feel of a larger space. And we feel that from a proportion standpoint, it would be better for it to have the 9-foot ceiling instead of 8 feet. And whereas bedrooms, because you're lying down and they're smaller spaces, I thought, okay, we can handle that. We'll take a foot off. But we still wanted to address the overall height and mass issue. That is why we reduced the pitch to the absolute minimum allowed for a tile roof, so that we do have the net overall reduction in height.
Okay. Well, I understand your argument that the larger the room, the more reason to have a higher ceiling. But some of those rooms are not all that large. But
It's really for the sake of this back space.
yeah, okay.
Because unlike traditional homes where the kitchen is a room, the den is a room, the nook is a room,
Sure.
it's all one open plan. So as a result, it's a larger space. There's no separation. It's visually open.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Your landscape plan calls for a multi-trunk tree. Of the trees listed on your legend, which tree is it?
Let's see. It may not, it could be.
No, it's in front. The
It's
one
in
in front
front?
is specifically called out to be a multi-trunk tree, but it doesn't specify which one it is.
I would imagine it's the biggest one shown.
Well, I know where it is on the plan. Which type of tree is it?
Oh, okay.
Are we talking pine trees, oak trees? What, it's kind of important because it has to fit in with the hillside.
Okay, let me take a look and see. Botanical. Well, it sure appears that the landscape architect provided a choice of 6 different types of trees, and according to this legend. And because this is deemed a preliminary landscape plan, I think that he just took some of these from the palette that is provided in the design guidelines and put them on here, so that at a kind of design development stage, they would start to say, okay, it's this one or that one. But out of this, if there's a particular one that you feel is more appropriate, we'd be more than happy to plant that one.
It kind of makes it hard for us to decide without you telling us what your intentions are.
I'm not the landscape architect. I'm not sure I can answer that question.
Do you have anything else for Adele at this time?
No,
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Adele.
Thank you.
All right. At this time, we will open up to public comment on this item. One at a time, please. Don't all rush to the.
Good evening again, Debbie Sheridan, Valley Vista Drive. Ms. Chang said 2 weeks ago that she is tired of coming to these planning commission meetings. Well, believe me, we residents are very weary of attending meeting after meeting when she does not hear what the planning commission tells her. The house is too massive for the lot. This time she has reduced the massing by 1 foot. One time it was 5 inches. What more can possibly be said? For you, Ms. Chang, and your firm, it is all about how much money you can get per square foot. For the residents, including those on the Planning Commission, it is about lifestyle. Your house does not conform to the 1996 general plan. It is too massive for the property. This is what we've been saying over and over. I know CETT Investments received the settlement agreement and are fully informed of the controversial history of this project. I'd like to point out page 5 of the settlement agreement. Quote, "This settlement agreement does not constitute an approval of the Stonehouse applications of the CS settlement proposal plan or of any development application relating to the Stonehouse property or the One Carter property," end quote. Let me reiterate. This settlement agreement does not constitute an approval of any development application. I'd also like to quote the design guidelines of the 1996 General Plan Land Use Goals Summary, page 18. Quote, number 6, preserve the hillside areas in order to protect the environment and mountain views and the hillside wilderness and establish the role of the hillside as an entry point into the wilderness areas, unquote. This is more of an entry point into cookie-cutter McMansions. Planning Commission, please do not be intimidated into approving this because of the threat of litigation. And I do want to go on the record of saying I am not anti-development. We have several new houses in Sierra Madre that fit into their neighborhoods and that are beautiful. I just don't want inappropriate homes, and especially this one, which will set a precedent, as we all know. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Good evening again, Commissioners. Barry Gold at 441 Ramona Avenue. The house you are being asked to approve tonight is just too bulky and massive for the pad it'll be built on. If you approve it, there will be 20 more just like it up there before you know it. And you will have set a precedent that would allow massive homes to be built all over this city. You will have fundamentally transformed Sierra Madre into something that generations for 107 years have fought to prevent. Either a city has a right to set building and design standards or it doesn't. Please do not approve this project, and then, if necessary, let the courts decide whether or not we have the right to preserve Sierra Madre. Thank you.
Good evening, Planning Commission. Matthew Bryant, Edgeview Drive. I'm a member of a new group that formed recently that is called Preserve Sierra Madre. Our group's focus will be on preserving Sierra Madre and stopping overdevelopment, with the One Carter Stonegate project being of primary concern to us right now. Because of its location, this was a bad project from the get-go. And it seems that this developer and their lawyer have tried to turn their problem into our problem. I don't think we have any obligation to make it our problem, nor any obligation to help them maximize their profit by building homes that are out of character for the neighborhood. This Planning Commission has made repeated requests for this developer to make changes to their project to make it comply with our guidelines here in Sierra Madre. Usually those requests were ignored, which is why this process has dragged on for so long. Now let me say this, there's also something wrong with the project when a developer needs to have a lawyer from the outset. There's something wrong with the project when the developer fails to convince the Planning Commission, the immediate neighbors, and the community at large of the merits of their project. That failure has nothing to do with us, but everything to do with the project they have put forward. I hope we have now reached the point where the developer either has to adhere to the letter of your recommendations and requirements, or their proposal should be denied. We should not compromise or lower our standards under the threat of a lawsuit. I'm concerned that if we knuckle under the threats of a lawsuit, we'll be setting a very bad precedent that will only serve to embolden future developers to follow the same tactic to force a bad project upon us. So we urge you to stand firm, knowing that you have the support of the community behind you. Thank you for your consideration.
Leslie Hinton on Acacia. Tonight I urge you to consider tonight's little revised project as if it were a new project that you were looking at for the first time. If you do that, if you view it in this manner, very quickly you will see that the bulk and mass do not fit the design guidelines. A tweaked bad project is still a bad project. This developer is trying to see exactly how much they can get away with. It's kind of like, for those of you who have had children and they've had messy rooms, and you say, okay, go clean your room, and then you can go do blah, blah, blah. So they put a couple things away. And you look at it, it's like, no, you still need to clean your room. So then they put a couple more things away. And you go back, and you keep doing this back and forth. And finally they wear you down, and they get to do what they want. Unless you're me, and then they don't. But that's what this group has done. They're just wearing us down. But you know what? We have faith in you guys, and this is still not the appropriate project for our community. Thank you.
Good night, Commissioners. John Hutt, Sierra Meadow. In the past, I've been very critical of this project, both in writing and before you. Tonight, I'm here to voice my more mild criticism, if not indifference. I commend the applicant on another round of incremental improvement. The current project is certainly better than the last version, and it is way better than the original version. The second-story massing has been removed from the front street facade. Overall, the project has less bulk and massing, and the awful fences have finally been removed. But we shouldn't confuse good progress with a good project. This is still a very large and bland design. The landscaping plan is preliminary to the point of useless. Fundamentally, this house bears no resemblance or no relationship to its hillside setting. It could be a model house in any flatland subdivision anywhere. So how do we get to this place where we're talking about whether something meets the bare minimum? Is it the design skills of the architect? I don't think so. I think we've seen a lot of good revisions. I've seen online her house, which is really cool. Was it the applicant's lack of communication? No. They've been to many meetings. They've heard. They actually had meetings with me and other concerned residents. I think they've done a good job in hearing our concerns. I don't even think it's the profit motive, which the applicant has been refreshingly honest about, instead of those people who fall in love with Sierra Madre even though they moved here for 2 months and then, leave as soon as they can flip their house. I think it's not so much that they want to make money, which is an end that I laud. It's a faulty assumption that all houses, no matter what they look like or how big they are, sell for the same price per square foot. This inevitably leads to bland design and oversized massing. I think the applicants need to throw this concept out. Know that good design adds value. A home that is sensitive to the unique characteristics of its hillside setting can be more profitable than a big, boring box. If it's too late for this project, the applicant should take this advice for future projects. The prior designs we've seen for the other two houses were worse at the start than this one, so they have a lot more to go. And I think if the applicant looked at it from this standpoint, they would find that the interests of the residents in town and people who have spoken tonight are actually aligned with the applicant. But really, the applicant's goals, who they are, whether they're a direct descendant of Nathaniel Carter or don't even live in town, what the prior versions of this project were, how much the town hates One Carter, what the other houses on One Carter are going to look like, don't matter. What matters is this project that's before you tonight acceptable? Does it meet the minimum standards? I think it's sort of a push. I think it's well within your discretion to decide either way. It's certainly not so horrible that every reasonable reviewer would turn it down, but it's not so good that it must be approved. Whatever you decide, I think an honest person reviewing your decision, including a judge if that needs be, whether they agreed or not, would find your decision to be reasonable. So if you decide to deny the project, please be fulsome and detailed on your reasons why. List the inconsistencies that you find with the general plan, the hillside management zone, and the Stone Gate design guidelines. And most importantly, demonstrate why you cannot make the required findings. If you decide that the project has met the minimum requirements and should be approved, I suggest that you add a few conditions of approval, even if these might be redundant. Require that the house include gray water system. Require that there be no property line fences. And require the fencing and landscaping plan to come back to the Planning Commission for review in an open public hearing. I know that that's something that often would go just to a staff level, but now that Danny's not going to be with us for much longer, we don't know who our replacement is and how controversial this project is, I think it really makes sense that that landscaping plan would come back to the Planning Commission. Thank you.
John? You met with the applicant, as some of the other neighbors did, and made some suggestions. In the last meeting, I don't know if she's here or not, but one of the neighbors said that there was stuff discussed. They sort of made it sound like you'd sort of come to an agreement. You had an idea what you thought they were going to come up with, and then things were sort of taken back. What falls into that category for you?
Well, I think that first there was multiple meetings. I met with the applicant myself and not with the other one, so I can't characterize those conversations. I didn't have any sort of agreement with the applicant on if you do X and Y, then I'm in favor of it. I gave them my thoughts. When they showed me the revised project, I said, you're going in the right direction. I said, take the fences out. I said, reduce the massing on the second floor. I thought it would be helpful to have additional fenestration on the second floor on the street-facing facade. Overall, reduce the bulk and massing. Those were my comments to them. They've done some of that.
Okay, but not enough as far as you're concerned, or just in terms of it being a bland project, not enough.
You know, if I were you where you were, I'd vote no. But if you vote yes, I can understand. I think this is right on the edge. It's not the project that I'd like to see, but that's not the criteria that you guys need to decide the project based on.
Okay, thank you. You are here.
Marguerite Schuster, Mount Wilson Trail. Apparently the end game for First Carter is near, for we all understand that nothing can be made to stick for the rest of the property that is not made to stick for the first house. Some of us who have worked on this project steadily for over a decade wonder if anything can be left to us besides deep grief at the destruction of this special place. That's the larger issue that tonight's decision will determine. As to what lies immediately before you, the changes since the last meeting strike me as unsurprising. You asked for a height reduction of 1.5 or earlier 2 feet. You got, of course, 1.5 feet. It still helps. You asked for a reduction in the size of the second story by at least 10 to 12%, as I recall. You got barely 10%, but at the cost of expansion of both the first floor and the basement. You asked that there be no expansion of the first floor footprint, but expansion there is. Not a lot, true. But anything hurts on a pad crammed as full as this one is. That makes for one clean gain out of 3 requests. One more example of the thoroughly frustrating course of these negotiations. A house with this footprint on a pad this size makes for a claustrophobic feeling in what should be an expansive natural area. Furthermore, the south exposure, which is what will be seen by the largest number of people, remains at best unwelcoming, indeed truly forbidding from the street level. It will be far worse when the magnificent old oak tree is gone. Remember, when you think of so-called mitigation, that no one in this room tonight will live long enough to see another tree of such majesty on that property. It is a criminal loss and a mystery to me how it could ever have been approved. Can you, will you, help us to re-envision what needs to happen on this property if its unique value, its place in our history and our heritage is not entirely to be sacrificed? Thank you.
Sarah Jane Harmon, 650 Baldwin Court. I second the request that a final landscape plan be presented to you. On the one where you can see the landscape plan, you can see that hook of land that goes around. Could we pull it up so that we can see it? So this piece of land that goes around there has several, more than several, many heritage trees on it. And I would like to have them be marked and preserved. Unlike the tree that was cut, or the trees that were cut when they first put up the shadow poles.
Am I allowed to read a letter from somebody who wasn't able to be here tonight? Oh, thank you. Okay, this is Mary and Evan Steinberg on Auburn. So, to the Sierra Madre Planning Commission, the project at 610 Baldwin Court remains a concern. We want that to continue and are hoping for a home that is sensitive to the environmental nature of the foothills and to the unique characteristics of the hillside areas in the city as described in the general plan. The project does not appear to fit this description. Sierra Madre is still blessed with nature and wildlife. Homes in areas like Baldwin Court cannot enhance the environment for wildlife, but we are hoping that they will not antagonize it. We request a home better suited to this unique environment, and we request the support of the Planning Commission. Thank you. And I have copies in case you didn't have them.
Hello, this is the first time that I've been at a Planning Commission meeting. My name is Marion Woodford, and I live at 618 Auburn Avenue. I am a designer and have been a designer for 48 years. I will tell you that I took a look at the design, and I would be embarrassed. It is very bland, it has no character, and the idea of putting 29 homes that might look like this is very discouraging. Thank you.
All right, we will close public comment and bring it back to the commission here.
Okay.
Should we start?
I'll start first with my comments.
Lead off.
Okay. When I looked at the changes that had been made, I thought, wow, not only because I saw they had lowered the roof height, the ceiling height on the second floor, and I thought, wow, not only did they lower the ceiling height like we asked, they also found an extra 6 inches by lowering the pitch of the roof, only to find out that no. For whatever reasons they decided, which she has explained what her reasons were. They decided not to lower the ceiling on the first floor, the 6 inches that I asked. This might not sound like a lot, but what we are tasked with is looking at making a building that has the least possible impact on our hillside zone in this particular, in the design guidelines we have here. And it says we should consider the character and profile of natural slopes and be designed to limit impacts to natural terrain remaining within the Stonegate development. So there is natural terrain directly behind this house. And the less bulk and the lower this house is, the less impact it has on the environment in general. And I would like to see that first floor reduced by the additional 6 inches. That would be 2 whole feet that this house would be lower, and I think that would be, yes, it's more than we asked for, but there, you've done something that shows us that we could go farther in terms of making this house fit into the environment much better. Another thing that I find really difficult about fitting this house into the environment is the color of this house. I know this is a traditional color for that style of house, but in order to make this house fit better into the environment, it would be much more appropriate to be a color that was more like the natural vegetation of chaparral and or earth, both in the walls, in the trim, in the roof, and in all the retaining walls. I also don't understand why the bulk and mass of the second floor were not reduced as much as we had discussed at the last meeting. Because I think that was a doable thing, and I think it was extremely important. Overall, when we started with this house, my impression, the first impression I had of this house was that we got a generic house that came somewhere from the flats of Arcadia and was plopped down in our hillside zone and into this development, which was completely inappropriate to the mass and the profile and all these things we were tasked with looking at. The architectural massing scale and building elements did not fit into that area. It has been improved some, and I think there's still more room for improvement. And I will end my comments there for the moment, and I'll come back to it later.
I concur. We have been working with this architect and developer for quite a while. We started it on lot 21 and 22. They have heard our concerns. We've been very consistent for almost a year as to what our objections are and what our concerns are and what our standards are and what Sierra Madre has outlined for its own development. And I contrast their response to our concerns with the response of the developer for the Kensington across the street. Now, this guy came in here, he wanted to build a behemoth building in the middle of town that everyone would see and everyone would drive by and everyone would have an opinion about. And he appeared before us a number of times. We gave him specific guidance. We also explained to him our overall concerns, and he not only listened to the guidance, but followed through, but even found ways of improving his project based on our concerns. So we had the impression that we were dealing with someone who is a partner in the compliance of the project with the city's wishes and general plan. In contrast, now we have a applicant who is giving us the bare minimum, although she has heard many, many times what our concerns are. You know, we want, it's specific that it's called out for, we want something to design and maintain to blend in with the natural landscape. They chose a Mediterranean design, and so in this hillside of greens and browns, we're going to get a giant white structure. Okay, so how do we make that white structure not appear to have bulk and massing? Well, we can modify it, and we are now put in the position where we are almost designing their project. We have continued to ask for specific recommendations, and like one of the members of the community pointed out, it's like a small child where they're trying to figure out where your limitations are. We never have the sense that the applicant has embraced the concerns of the community and is actively coming up with solutions on their own. Gina's presentation is correct. They could have found a way of making those roof lines smaller. They made it to the minimum they could, and they said, well, that's good enough. So we are concerned because we have an application whose shape and size and color promotes the massing. And every time this comes up, I drive up there and I stand and I look at that location, and I'm thinking, this is going to be big based on its design. I brought up the landscaping because you can hide a number of sins with some good landscaping, but we get a minimum, we get very little from them in terms of landscaping. And so all along the line here, we are dealing with an applicant who is very reluctant to show good faith and embrace the concerns of the community and the regulations that we are required to enforce, which makes it very difficult for me personally to assume that we are going to get a project that the community can live with forever. So, at this point, I'm very conflicted as to whether we should, what we can do to proceed, because I believe that we're dealing with, and I guess they sometimes call it a hostile witness, somebody who is not going to, who is not going to embrace fully our hillside development standards and our local municipal codes in order to create a project that will blend into and follow the landscape of the community. So I'm a little reluctant on this.
The only thing I'd like to add is obviously nobody's happy. The client sort of wants what they want. They've made this design. It's not our job to design their project. Obviously, we all wish, and the community wished it looked different. Maybe wishing it was one story. I guess that's what I was thinking at some point we don't have that. On the other hand, I'm conflicted. I agree with John Hutt. They meet the minimum standards. We kind of hash those out a little bit. There are still some things that, like Gina pointed out, that they could minimize these things and still meet their requirements, but they still haven't done. I think the landscaping project, I didn't think about that last time, and the coloring to make it blend in are two things that could help. But I don't know that we're going to be able to modify this much more than we've already suggested. Yeah, nobody's really happy, and it's just too bad. Unfortunately, it sort of meets some of the minimum standards, but it does also pale when people talk about it not being sort of out of character, or just sort of being I don't know if it's bland or drab, but certainly for the hillside and fitting in, it's not a design that doesn't necessarily fits there, but they are certainly close.
Well, my feelings on this project are pretty well known, but I have to look at it objectively. One thing I would like to say is that we heard earlier that they had gotten rid of a tubular fence. If they read the guidelines to begin with, they can't have any fence in there at all. So it's like they took away something that shouldn't have been there. And I kind of think that might be part of the problem. They didn't really look at the guidelines for this property. They didn't look at the guidelines for the area. This is supposed to fit into our hillsides. That is what the guideline that they're not meeting, that's where we're stuck at, okay? So that's just one of them, okay? We certainly, at the last meeting, we had said we were close. We gave them some suggestions. They came back with, as I've heard tonight, the bare minimum. So what we want to do is, I don't know how many real stark things we have to give them. If this house is built, it's got to be built with dark sky. It's got to be built with a gray water system. And do we have to see that before this project goes forward? I don't know if we're at that point yet. It certainly has come a long way from where it was, and I certainly appreciate the fact it has. But believe me, a lot of the pull and a lot of the grief on this has been with this commission. I don't think it's been with the applicant. Everything we've gotten that has been closer to what the original guidelines were for this property, we've had to drag them kicking and screaming to point it out to them, where I think they should have seen that in the beginning, okay? We were talking about some other suggestions on this. I was with Gina last week, or the last meeting, when she said 1.5 feet had come back in, and the 1.5 feet, not the way we basically had talked about it. They reduced the pitch of the roof. I know we had talked about there is some time in the future, once this house gets built, there's going to be a house next door to it. And then the mass of the second story to the property to the north, I think, should be brought down. And I think we've come up with some good suggestions to do that, which evidently they didn't follow. So I think we're close, but I think we're still, when I say we're close, that means, gee, could you really come back to what we were talking about the last time and follow our suggestions on it? So.
I'd just like to note that a lot of progress was made since the last meeting. I think the design has come a long way, and they did come up with some ideas since the last meeting. We talked about a reduction of 1.5 feet, but what was discussed was lowering the ground floor ceiling height, and the height has come down, but more can still be done. The architect talked about the fact that the size of the room in the back, because of the width and length of it, lends itself to a taller ceiling, and that's true. But also the rooms in the front are smaller, and they can lend themselves to a lower ceiling. So I could see the front 3 rooms, the den, the foyer, and the living room, ceiling height dropping another 12 inches, which would be appropriate for that size of a room. So it's come a long ways, but I think there's still more work to be done.
All right, let's see if I can add to this conversation here. I do want to start on the same tone that I think a lot of what we had suggested last time was heeded and implemented. Unfortunately, I think this really comes down to not seizing the opportunities that are still on the table. One of the things that were suggested when we were looking at pushing and pulling the mass of the second story to the point of providing a sketch of how that could be done, I think the front elevation, the mass was pulled back from the street an additional close to 5 feet, which is great. I think that's helping quite a bit. I think he's sucking in the master bedroom or the south side elevation, as minor as it seemed, I think is helping that to, again, bring that mass of the second story more in center of the floor plan. I was kind of curious to see why on the north side, that mass was not as well addressed to pull in. There is an opportunity there without, again, sacrificing your program or cutting into that to pull that in, and that wasn't heeded or implemented. You know, it would have gone a long way to, again, start to bring that second story mass inward to the center. And that was sort of left off the table. I think this idea of lowering the plate heights, I know it's, again, an opportunity missed with not lowering the first floor plate the 6 inches. And I think there's an opportunity here to, again, it's how this house appears. So if we were to lower that second story an additional 6 inches, I actually think if you left the front rooms, which are sort of your public spaces, your den, foyer, living room, the way this is laying out, you could actually leave those at the higher plate height, which is 9 feet, but everything that's under second story, which would be the dining, the kitchen, the nook, the family, the porch, all of that, lowering that 6 inches, what starts to happen is the front of the house, the back of the house lowers, that actually will appear even lower because you've got the front story, which the front portion of the house, which appears as a one-story element. And you would, again, have the opportunity to reduce that mass visually. I don't think that's asking a lot. I think that's something, I mean, you still would have a plate height of 8.6 on the majority of the ground level, and the front portions could remain at the 9-foot plate height, which actually would help the mass to appear like it's a foot shorter by doing that. And then I would love to see the mass addressed on the north side. I feel like that additional truncating inward would help, again, for the overall mass to appear as it's centered sort of in the central area of the ground level. And I would love to see that taken advantage of. And the third thing that we haven't really addressed, because I think there were bigger issues we were trying to get the architect and the applicant to look at, but I think, you know, the exterior color palette, it would help tremendously to have it go darker, you know, and the roof material as well, to help it sit better in the site. So those are kind of three things. You know, you've come a long way. I mean, I think 3/4 of what we suggested last time as concrete suggestions were implemented, and I think it's actually a better plan for those things, and I don't think you sacrificed your programmatic needs. But there's still a few things here that I think are opportunities that you could take advantage of and do that would make the project, as far as the bulk, scale, and mass and the height, reduce. And I don't think you would be sacrificing what you would like out of the project and what we as up here would like to see reduced. I think all these things could be done. So that's kind of where we're at. So do we want to Does the applicant want to come up?
No.
No? All right. So I guess we can make,
You have, I think I've heard all the commissioners, some of them were similar in the design considerations that you've suggested. You can decide that these changes that you've articulated, if those considerations could be made, perhaps you can request that if those considerations can be made, they could return with those design changes. As you know, we don't have a resolution before you this evening. And if you agree to those particular changes, we could come back, as this needs to come back anyway.
yeah.
That's one option.
What specifically would come back to us?
What I've heard are color, first of all, color, the color, to be a darker color, closely matching the natural hillside colors of a chaparral or a darker roof in all their exterior finishes. I heard additional 6 inches to 1 foot to a reduction of a ceiling height.
Mm-hmm.
And the third I heard was looking at the north side second level, bringing that inward to reduce the bulk and mass of that second level.
And the landscape plan.
And a landscape plan. To return a landscape plan.
I guess I would like to have the opportunity to ask the applicant why they didn't make the changes all the changes that we requested last time. I'd like an answer to that question. I mean, there must be a reason, because we requested certain things, and I'd like to know
let
why.
Let me, if I can, Richard McDonald on behalf of the applicant. A couple of quick points by way of background. Number one, with regard to a landscape plan, the conditions of approval for the vesting tentative track map that was approved by the city already set forth the procedures for that. So to the extent that you want to modify that tonight, you should probably talk with your city attorney about how to do that and reconcile it with the vesting tentative track map. That track map also, by the way, does talk about fences and divisions between the property lines. So the comments that to the extent we didn't look at the guidelines, which don't talk about fencing, and instead followed an approved vesting tentative track map that was approved by the city, is factually incorrect. With regard to such matters as lowering the first floor an additional 6 inches or changing the color from the antique sort of off-white to a beige or something earth tone, those can easily be conditions of approval similar to the gray water system that we already agreed to. We don't, if you want it to be a beige earth tone, that's fine, that's not a big deal. Lowering it 6 inches, if you think that will make a huge difference, that's up to you. I personally don't really feel that's within the purview of much of the design guidelines, but that's, I'm not going to quibble about 6 inches. With regard to your comments about, why didn't you make the changes we wanted, quite candidly, we believe we made 90% of the changes that you asked. And this conversation about the north side was not raised last time, nor was the issue of color. So to make statements like that, or to make statements that we've not proceeded in good faith, I personally believe is self-serving BS. And to sit back and say you've been consistent when over a year ago this commission said that they liked lot 21 and 22 but not 24, and then a year later flipped, is equally self-serving.
To your point,
Having said that, though, I was the one that had the idea for a workshop. I was the one that pushed to try to get a breakthrough at that workshop. We have tried to work with you on the idea of regrading for purposes of basements. We have tried to follow some suggestions, but obviously not 100%. You think it's 75%, we think it's 90%, 95%. Okay, but the point is, we have acted in very good faith every step of the way to try to build what we believe we have a right to build. You don't think we do? Okay. But I'm not going to sit here and let my client continue to be attacked personally. I just find that offensive. Having said, I mean, it's a design project. It's an architectural matter.
And one clarification on your comments, we did address the north side the last meeting. In fact, to the point of the sketch I provided you showed that side being reduced. So not only did we tell you verbally, we showed you visually.
Do we get a sketch? Did you give a sketch to staff? Because we never got it.
Yes.
We never got it.
Yes, I had it up here, showed it. Staff has it.
Did you get a sketch or something that you were supposed to give to us? All right, Derek's now just said, were we supposed to give it to us? Well, guess what? We never got it.
We also talked about it at the last meeting, so your recollection on that is incorrect.
I recall the conversation, and the conversation was, you were gonna give it to Danny, and it was gonna be available if you wanted to see it.
To see it.
Correct.
If you wanted to ask to see it, it was gonna be available with Danny. That was what was said at this meeting, as I recall.
Yep,
That's correct.
it's in the record.
If you chose not to ask to see it, we can't control that.
We'll just disagree with that. Again, I mean, the way you twist these things are just amazing.
I think you do the same thing.
It's in the record. You can go check it.
Again, and I did. I watched your video.
Yeah, and we had it, and we said, you can see it. Danny will have it available at the counter.
That's not anywhere in the video.
It's probably part of the video that got cut out.
Perhaps, yes.
Well, that is a huge problem for you then, because if you don't have a correct record, that's going to be a problem.
Don't worry about our record. I mean, it's ridiculous. This is where we're at. What we want to hear from you is if these changes are amenable. If not, we need to hear that from you. If these are, there are 3 items on the table as far as we're concerned. The exterior color material palette, which you've addressed, that would not be an issue. The 6-inch lowering of the height plate on the ground level, and then addressing the north side, the mass, as prescribed in the landscape plan.
It's the acacia tree. My eyes are bad.
Is that what it says on the plan? It says multi-trunk tree.
If you really look at the way the top legend, the top one most resembles in shape and look, it was put here. It's the top tree on the legend on the left side, and then if you go.
But your symbols aren't even in order. It's not like, how can you tell if that symbol is the acacia tree versus the one to the lower right? I mean,
Because it couldn't be the.
Why couldn't it be?
Italian cypress.
How would we know that? See, this is our frustration. You know, we're as frustrated as you are, and we're trying to do a good job, and we're trying to make sure that the project complies with the city codes. And we hear from all the citizens. You've been here for all these meetings, and yet, you know, you have fences that appear at one session and disappear in another. And you tell me, well, I was sick, I couldn't do it, I had a problem that week. Well, we would like to proceed in good faith. We would like to know that we are dealing with an applicant who understands what our concerns are. You could have come up with, hey, you know what? We can make this project appear smaller. We're gonna change the color. We're smart enough to do that, and we will show you that we can act in good faith and proceed based on your concerns. But we don't get that. What we get is, yeah, we hear you, but we're only gonna do this. So we this commission feels that we are dealing in an adversarial format. And so now you want us to, proceed as if we're all friends, and I don't think that's happened. And I don't think it's all on this side. And I referenced the gentleman that built a giant building right across the street, was able to do that without acrimony.
I doubt I ever suggested we proceed as friends.
Yeah.
But I think what I suggested...
First thing we agree on.
What I think I suggested, though, was that it does not need to be personalized. That people can have reasonable disagreements without being disagreeable on matters that are non-personal matters.
I think you should take that comment to heart yourself. I'd like to agree with Bob, and just from one point of view, which is that we have been here a lot of meetings. We're all volunteers. We do this. I wouldn't say we do it for fun. We do it for a sense of civic worth, right? We make suggestions, and we get 50% of that done. We make another suggestion, it's a little more increment. We make another suggestion, it's a little more increment. I don't know if you had the feeling that we had at the last meeting, or that I had at the last meeting, which was like, we thought we were really close. And we made some very concrete, specific recommendations about things. And I thought that, if we can get these things done and take a look at it, this could be a project that could be approvable. Now, you come back and you think you've done 90%, and I don't see 90% there. I certainly don't see 100% of what we asked to have done. And I think it's extremely disappointing from my point of view, because I'm not going to say I like this project, but this is a project I might be able to hold my nose and vote yes on. That's how I feel about it, right? I might have been able to if we had gotten to 100% of what we had asked for. My fingers aren't getting close to my nose because we're not quite there. And this has been every single time. It's extremely frustrating for us. It's a waste of our time. We spend a lot of time here sitting, listening, making comments, making recommendations. We're wasting our time because we are tasked with this issue, architectural massing scale and building elements, right? This is what we've been tasked with by the city council. We're trying to get to a point where there could be a building built here that meets the elements that we are presented with.
Then you have before you, if I
We have
understand-
before you not quite what we asked for. Every time it's been not quite what we asked for.
Well, obviously I disagree, but
Obviously you
moving on-
disagree, but
Moving
you
on.
can disagree. It's not.
If the questions that the chair asked were, I think you said color was one. The second dealt with the north side of the second floor, or the second was the height of the first floor, and the third was the second floor side.
So I think
Those were the three, if I recall, I'm trying to remember them.
There's four, and if you don't mind, I'll just go through them, and then for clarity's sake here, one, you're correct, the exterior color and material palette to be darker than what's been depicted, which is synonymous with this style of architecture, but would not be fitting with sort of the setting that the house is in. So we would love to see that go to a darker palette.
That's fine.
Okay, so that's one. Two is the height issue. So there's an opportunity, I believe, and most of the commission believes, is we can lower the ground level, which is currently 9 foot plate, to an 8.6 under the areas that are under the second floor.
Right, that's fine.
Okay, so the front half, which is your public living room and den and foyer, that could remain at the 9 foot plate.
Understood, that's fine.
So the back half would come down the 6 inches. The third item was the north side massing, and that was, I'm sorry that you didn't get to see that sketch that we provided, or there was a miscommunication there, but part of it was addressing that north side. It wasn't by much, but it was enough that it pulled that mass in about a foot, I think, for that entire side. Required a little bit of reworking of your master bathroom and such, but I think it could be done without impacting your program. And the fourth thing was the landscape plan to be, I guess, more detailed or very clear as to what is being proposed and planted, and not in sort of this no man's gray area where we're all trying to figure out what exactly it is. I think that's, yeah, I don't think it's actually that complicated. I think it's as simple as either numbering these things or putting the symbol of what it actually is next to the text. You know, so I think it's a clarity thing rather than
It's a separate plan, basically.
Yeah.
But that people do that. I mean, if you look at the vesting tentative track map, it talks about a separate landscaping plan provided to the director and to be approved by the director. Now, if you want to change that or throw a condition of approval on this that says Planning Commission 2, that's why I'm saying, you know, check with your city attorney on whether or not you can do that. I don't honestly know the answer.
So those were the 4 items.
It's fine with me. But
And I
it's
think
fine
that's
with me
right.
with the caveat about what I said about the 4th one. I don't honestly know the answer.
But what I'm hearing from you is that on those 3 items, that you are amenable to making those revisions.
No, I'm saying go ahead and approve it with those 4 conditions of approval, and that'll take care of it.
Well, what we would
I mean,
like.
you're talking about a condition of approval for color. You basically say make it an earth tone color of beige or something. I mean, that's a very straightforward sort of thing.
I think what we're
lowering a ceiling height of a first floor, same thing.
Well, here's where we're at. To get into detail, I think where we're at is there is not a resolution in front of us to sign. You will have to come back. I believe it would, or at least would be the next session. That we would, our thinking was that we would conditionally approve, but the caveat being we would need to see those changes made to the plans, which you would be coming back to us in 2 weeks. If those changes are implemented, then
yeah, fine,
we're ready to
I
go.
understand what you're talking about. Sometimes and again, I don't want to overstep my role and step into the city attorneys, but many times you see conditions of approval that say a project's being approved consistent with Exhibit A attached here too, and the Exhibit A is the site plan and the plans that you're looking at and visually seeing.
If we had a good faith relationship with the developer, we might do that.
No. Well, thank you for that. I'm talking about in resolutions. Oftentimes you see that done. So at the time that the resolution is approved, you have it in front of you to attach to it.
So then I think we're look like we're saying.
Well, if I could just,
go ahead.
if I could just look at the next meeting, is that if you conditionally approve, what we would be expecting is that they bring a plan back that identifies those 4 items. Staff will prepare a draft resolution for approval, subject to those items being identified that evening, with plans submitted. Is that fair for the commission? Is this what you would like to see?
I think that's what we're kind of looking for, is to see it. So whatever that entails, like for the colors, if that's
In terms of
materials.
color, they would a simple swatch of color with identifying the
I'd like to
the
see
exterior.
a storyboard of the colors.
Sure.
That's good.
And they provided one, but
I
would they
think they
switch
have,
out of
yeah.
those colors?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the plans revised, I mean, basically this packet, but with the changes, the other 3 changes that we addressed.
Now, that meeting is in 2 weeks. That would be October 16th. I just want to make sure the applicant is aware that, we would need the plans by October 8th at the latest, which is next Wednesday.
Can I make a suggestion procedurally? It's a little different than what normally would happen, but what you could do is continue this meeting, but with specifically with the direction that if those 4 specific changes are made, that the commission, assuming you can get a majority approval for a motion like this, would consider approving a resolution. It'd be able to make the findings, and the resolution would come back at the next meeting. So technically, you'd be continuing the meeting with specific direction to the developer to bring back a plan that that has these 4 new conditions showing on that, because without that picture, without that plan, including the storyboard that you'd like to see showing the color, and a landscape plan showing how it will all look when that landscaping is matured, because what the commission has been very consistent in saying for the record over and over again for 7 or 8 meetings is make it appear less massive, a smaller scale, visually less imposing, given the site that it's on, and fit better in the natural landscape. So we need to see that. And if that comes back and those 4 items are satisfied, that you would be inclined to adopt a resolution of approval at that next meeting with those specific conditions and subject to the plan, but the plan has to be shown. It can't just be an approval tonight. We don't have the resolution anyway, particularly since the resolution, as Mr. McDonald states, would actually refer to the exhibit. So we need the exhibit. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's one of your options, or you could deny it. But again, the final action for approval, denial, would have to be made at the next meeting. We just need some direction which way you're leaning so that the appropriate resolution could be prepared in advance.
Okay, I'd just like to make sort of a specific and a general comment about this before we proceed. We're tasked with making a decision based on the guidelines and codes that we have. And I think with these additional changes that this building more or less fits into those guidelines that we have, which is not to say I wouldn't rather see something else, but that's not really the choice that we have. That's the specific thing about this. In general, though, to the community at large about we're going to have more projects coming in One Carter. And we have to apply the same guidelines to each individual project on each individual lot. And each lot up there is different. And each project will need to be different in order to meet these guidelines about how the buildings fit into the environment there. And so it's not a cookie cutter approval of any building in the future. This is this individual approval of this individual building, and it's a process that will have to continue on each individual building that comes along.
Yep.
If I may, just one final comment. We, 2 meetings ago, offered to meet with community people to try to master plan. I know the prior owners of the property never suggested that, but I threw out that suggestion. We're still open to that idea so that it's not one house, trench warfare kind of thing. And because I think John Hutt, when we met with him, he and I talked about the whole master plan, and then Ms. Sheridan and I talked about it. There were a number of ideas about how certain lots interrelate, how certain lots are cut weirdly, for lack of a better word. So just as a quick aside, I personally still think that's a good idea, and throw that out there as food for thought.
Yeah, I do too. Good suggestion.
I would suggest that if you do that, you get away from the use of designs that are too pat to make your to present to the community. I think that you have a lot of different sized lots and a lot of different sized pads up there that are going to force you to use unique and inventive designs. And this design that you've given us seems to be right out of somebody's, workbook. And you're going to have to come up with more innovative and smarter designs that reflect the needs of our community. And I think you could probably be successful if you do that. I think one of your challenges here is you've selected to do a Mediterranean design, and that comes with it certain limitations, and it comes with it certain challenges. It's very hard to make a large white building look less massive, and yet, I'm sure you have people that are smart enough to know how to do that, but it's been a fight for us to convince you to do that. I think you can still make money on innovative designs. It doesn't have to be something that only looks like this, because that's what's selling in other communities. The citizens of Sierra Madre, I think, can be quite happy with houses that fit our guidelines but are also interesting, and I think that they would sell, and you would, we understand that you need to develop these properties. But to make it a constant struggle between the two of us to comply with what we need to have done and what you want to have done on this based on this experience, I am not in favor of some master plan, because I don't know what the details are, and I don't trust you to follow the details. So you can look forward to one at a time, or you can abandon the, the Costco version of architecture and come up with unique and special designs that would encourage people to buy them and also fit in with the plan. So.
Yeah. But Bob, in and of that, a previous comment was talked about combining certain lots, which I think would speak to that as well, and that is something I think would be a benefit to have a conversation about a master plan, whether anything good comes out of it or not. But some of the lots are just not buildable or combined.
They have very challenging lots there, and based on these kinds of designs, those lots are unbuildable. But if they were to embrace different kinds of designs and be a little more creative in their approach and a little more sensitive to what the concerns of the community are, I think they could develop something up there. I think they could put things there. And I'm not against having houses up there. I firmly believe that there are going to be houses on that property. And that may not be popular, but it's their land. But the problem is it going to be one house at a time, and is it going to be this kind of hand-to-hand combat for each house? It may be that, because quite honestly, the way the relationship between the developer and the community is right now is I don't think there's trust that a larger plan we will see all the details at the end.
The problem I have with that, and I understand Bob's concern on this, is that if they follow our guidelines, it shouldn't be a fight at all. Build something that's going to fit in up there, not going to be too massive and stuff. And it's kind of easy. If you want to try to put an 8,000 square foot house up there on a lot that's going to hold maybe 1,000 square foot house, there's a problem. We're going to fight on it. But we've gone through this because we are letting them know what our limits are. But they should have already known that in the plans, in the guidelines, so.
Could I ask a procedural question? If there was interest in allowing the community to have a shot at talking to the developer to develop a master plan, would that mean that this particular house comes off the table until that master plan has been completed? I mean, I guess that's a question for the developer.
It's a question for the applicant, yeah.
It looks to me like I see the architect look like she's just threw her neck out, shaking her head no.
No, that's not,
Okay.
not at all what was meant by the suggestion.
I mean, my thoughts on it, I think, I definitely hear Bob's concerns, and the track record so far isn't very glowing as far as working through these issues, but I feel like a master plan is an opportunity. I mean, it's a planning exercise, and it's an opportunity to see kind of what the opportunities are and what the possibilities are ahead of sort of bringing in one concrete plan after another and then doing hand-to-hand combat on each plan. I think it's a better tack to sort of look at this holistically. I mean, let's not hide behind the fact that, you know, these are coming at us one at a time, but there will be many more houses that'll be put up there by the same applicant. So I feel like looking at it holistically and at a 30,000 height, you know, and seeing what's possible, whether there are combinations of lots or whether some weird lots, you know, because I think there are ways to push the envelope a little bit, and I think as far as the design goes, and I don't think we have to necessarily prescribe to, you know, a textbook version of a house on this lot. I think, you know, a master planning session or however that works out is a great opportunity to dream a little bit and see what's possible before you get down into the weeds of plans and styles and things that where we're at now, where we're sort of shoehorning something onto a site that maybe there would have been something better that we could have done. So I think actually it's a good suggestion.
Well, maybe we'll, to simplify, maybe we'll pursue it on our own with some of the community members, but just as a practical point. I mean, I agree with you on the 30,000 foot, which is why I suggested it. A practical point, more at boots on the ground level. How many times have each of you sort of commented about the south-facing wall and what impact it may or may not have on the south property, the property right adjacent to the south? A year ago, when you were looking at lot 21 and 22 and the interaction between them. So just as a practical matter, the fact that you have lots sitting next to each other and you're, meaning you, the Planning Commission, are expressing concerns about impacts on a south view to an adjacent property or a north view up a hill, those are very practical points that you can look at one at a time, or you can take the 30,000 and look a little more holistically and see what you can do ahead of time.
Yeah, I mean,
I think, I can see both sides of this. I mean, I think that sort of looking at it from the big picture makes sense. However, in looking at it from a big picture, I don't want to lose any of the specific close look at each individual site, because if you look at 20 lots at a time, you just do not get to look at each one of them as carefully as when you look at each one individually.
Well,
So
for clarification, though, I wouldn't be in favor of we're approving 20 designs on a master plan at 30,000 feet. I think it's more. I think it would be more to study at some level, you know, whether these lots are amenable to a single story with the basement kind of thing, or if this lot's amenable to combine with this to build something that's, you know, those kind of more planning issues. But I don't think it would preclude us then to come back and say, okay, now we're just looking at this one lot now. What are the ramifications of the design on that? So that I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think
because there's many levels of interaction here. I mean, in this case, we have this building interacting with the land that it's on, but the neighbors aren't there yet. Once you get one house in, it's going to impact how the next house gets built in terms of how it fits into the built environment and the natural environment, how the buildings relate to each other, how the views change with each building, and so it's not simple at all. It's complex. It's, you know, there's many levels of
and in fact, I think this project may have benefited from something like that. Had that been sort of, I mean, I don't want to go back in history, but having looked at, I mean, I know early on when we were looking at the 3 lots, we had looked at some of the nice aerial and 3D that showed masses, you know, for the surrounding houses and trying to get a feel for the context. But I think even this project would have potentially benefited from sort of looking at the whole before we zoomed in here. But you know, I think that opportunity still exists moving forward, so.
I agree, and when they started, I wasn't employed with them, so that's why I'm suggesting it now.
And if it's community-based, I mean,
Yeah.
it's not our time yet to either. And it's also been, I mean, I think what you're trying to say is that you get some of the community support, so you don't get as many people coming out and sort of nitpicking some of the things that you're having to, you know, that we end up sort of getting a bland, well, you know, some people are complaining at a bland design or whatever. You want to have something that becomes a superior development for that area, and that's I think that's commendable, especially when you mentioned combining lots for the purpose of you know, of the overall project. I think that only good can come out of that, especially.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm just throwing ideas out that when you look at things from a different perspective, or other end of the telescope, as I say, you know, yeah, you can go house by house and do this house and do the one next to them. You can do it just like dominoes. I mean, but it's also sometimes, I think, better to look at things from the other end of the telescope. Maybe lots get combined. Maybe you do 2 single stories as opposed to combined. It just depends. I mean, the idea is to try to think it through.
All right.
John Hutt and Marguerite Schuster are involved. I think bad can come out of it.
So we still have this notion of, I believe, City Attorney, that you were saying it's sort of a continuation with the caveat.
With, yes, one option would be, because you've thrown out 4 things, and I've heard the applicant's attorney, unless I misheard, express a concurrence of those things. So really it comes down to the procedure. We can't do a hard approval with conditions this evening for a couple of reasons. We don't have the resolution, and that resolution will necessarily refer to a plan, a picture, a design. We don't have it. So based on what the 4 things that I've heard the Commission throw out and the applicant's apparent concurrence with those, one option would be procedurally for you to, if a motion is made that has majority support, to continue with direction to the applicant to bring back the design with these specific changes that you want to see, with an eye toward, and then direction to staff to bring back a resolution of approval. And of course, it's all contingent upon the applicant really bringing back the plan, implementing the suggestions that you have said, not at the 75% level, maybe not even at the 90% level, but at the 100% level. Let's not trip at the finish line.
So do we have
I will make
motion?
this continuing motion. I will make this continuing motion. I just want to make sure that the applicant and the applicants and the architect understand very precisely what suggestions we have on the table here. I see a nod or a yes. You understand exactly what?
I scribbled them down as fast as I could as the chair, and what I wrote down was, and if I'm wrong, just tell me, because I was scribbling as you were talking.
Okay.
6 inches off the first floor. You said something about the back versus the front, but I can't read my handwriting. 1 foot off the north side coming in.
The entire north side, yes.
The colors.
Color palette, complete.
I know, I'm just,
Yeah.
you threw in the word entire, so
Well,
I was just writing that down.
Yeah, so.
Earth tone colors,
Yeah.
and landscape plan.
Right.
So the entire north side mass, 1 foot inward. And then, yeah, the color, material palette.
Well, yeah, then with the 6 inch on the first floor, you're saying something about
That was basically,
the back part.
yeah, on your ground
All the
plan.
part that's under the part that has 2 stories.
Yeah, so the, whatever's under the second story, that part
Okay,
would come,
yeah.
so that whole thing would drop 6 inches. But the front
that's-
part, which is your living
Right.
room, foyer, and Dan can stay.
Right.
And that's an additional 6 inches after
Right.
the 1 foot 6 inches that has already been reduced, just to be perfectly clear on this.
That's an additional.
Right.
An
So,
additional 6.
And then the landscape plan.
right. So
We're in agreement on that.
All right, so I think
I just
we're
want
good.
to be perfectly clear before I make a motion that.
The applicant agreed to a gray water plan. Does that need to be specified since it's only been verbal?
Direction to staff for a condition of approval. Yes, please.
It's also part of the track map approval.
But we have that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Go ahead, Gina.
I'm making this motion to continue to a date certain, which is 2 weeks from now.
Yes.
Right? With the direction that if these particular changes are made in the plans and you come back with, and the staff will come back with a proposal for approval that we'll vote on at that time. Is that?
Yes.
Yes.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? What time is it? I'd like to call a little break.
Okay.
So we're going to take a 5-minute recess and then come back for the last, I believe it's the last item, the discussion item for the draft general plan.
Tell me when. Okay.
We're good? Okay. We are back from recess here, and we move on to the discussion item for this evening, Draft General Plan Update Review, Water Conservation Policies and Implementation Program.
Yes, I'll just give an introduction to this. The Planning Commission will continue their review of the draft implementation program. This includes policies from the land use section, community services, hazard preservation, and resource management chapters. And attached to each of the implementation program table for reference is the corresponding section that includes the policies that are referenced in the table. Okay. There will be more implementation programs for other sections. We're giving you what we have to date. Because these chapters involved police, fire, library services, staff members are here. They have all played a part in taking these policies and putting in, making implementation measures. So they're here in the audience. Did you have any questions? The other part of this tonight's review is review of the water conservation policies from the water resources and public services sections. They have also been updated. You did review these, but they've been updated to include water conservation policies, similar to when we brought you the land use policies at the last meeting.
Danny?
Yes.
2 weeks ago, you mentioned that coming to this commission will be the home inspection on sale program. Is that going to appear and influence what we have in front of us?
It is an item that, well, it is coming before the city council. I'm trying to remember if at the end of the month. I'm trying to remember is it included in the October 16th meeting? Let me see, just
because it does influence both water conservation and safety.
The text of the land use section has been revised to add that language, as you recall from the last meeting. So what the city council will be seeing as they start their land use section review will include that as a red line revision to the land use section.
About the home inspection program on sale.
Yeah, and the city.
That was the language that you asked for, recommended as part of one of the policies.
Correct.
So yes, that will be included in that document that they review on October.
There's a special meeting on October 7th.
October 7th.
Where the council is reviewing that. Now, it's also a discussion item of the council at a later meeting in October. I think it's their second meeting in October, where they're going to begin the discussion about consideration of a property sale inspection. Whether that comes back to you as a planning commission, it'll be up to the city council to get your input, and then.
At that time, would you go back and modify the general plan to include those elements, because they will influence both water conservation and safety?
If it's necessary, the policies, as Leticia mentioned, were included.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Just going back to the water conservation policies, to be clear, the added text to the to water resources and public services are highlighted for ease of reference. The red lines reflect the changes and updates the Planning Commission has made to date. Just so you understand that the focus really is the highlighted language. Those other red line text in the water resources and public services were items you had already made changes to. Unless you have any changes you want to make to those, you certainly can, but just to focus that what we're bringing to you is the highlighted sections. With that, we can just begin with the implementation program and your attachments. Law enforcement is first, and I'll bring it back to the chair as to how you want, usually it's page by page. If they have any comments, we just keep moving forward.
Yeah, I say we go page by page. Any comments, just throw them out there and we'll dissect it. I think the way you've done it this time, though, you've got your implementation, but then you've got the text too right after it, right?
We have the text, yes, because that way you have a reference.
Yeah, okay. So I say we just start at the top. Table 5-1 Law Enforcement Implementation Program. Page 1, IM1 and IM2. Anything?
Don't you have specific, I noticed there were some shaded areas, but they come much later
in the
in the
text part,
document, yeah.
Right, and the water.
This is all new, everything that we're looking at here?
Yeah, these are all new for
Implementation part.
the implementation part. The text that you receive after these tables have already been, that's already the general plan document.
Right, but I saw there were some additional ones that you shared, but it comes very late in the
Right.
document, okay.
In the water conservation. All right, seeing nothing of great significance there. Page 2. I think it's page 2. Yeah, page 2. IM3, IM4, IM5.
I have a comment on IM8, the next one.
IM8, all right. Well, anything on 6 and 7? Okay, 8, up.
I think IM8 should be modified to include all public employees because Section 3100 of the Civil Code says that all public employees are disaster service workers. It's part of their public employment. And as such, they probably should have an understanding of the incident command system. It's not hard. They can take a class online. But in this small city, we don't have the luxury of having a great depth, and people are going to have to cross over and fill in for other people, and having everyone understand how the incident command system works will be very helpful.
Just a note on that, if the commission agrees with that recommendation, I would recommend that you also modify the policy, only because the policy specifically says train law enforcement staff.
I agree.
So that needs to go hand in hand, so that's just recommendation.
So C 4.2.
Make it all public employees,
Oh, yeah.
all city employees.
Or we could say, train all sworn police personnel.
They get it
and
as
all
part of their
employees of the city.
They get it in the academy, but they should already and as part of their ongoing training. But the people that don't get it are all and you should probably include even the part-time employees, because they're going to get pressed into service.
They do.
Everyone does it, every employee.
Okay.
Okay, we can make that.
Then
we can make that
Then it
change.
should be changed to reflect that.
Okay, we'll make the change both in the implementation and on the policy. That's
Okay.
Nine, 10, and 11.
Yeah, 9, 10, 11. Seeing nothing there, all right. 12, 13, and 14. So this IM 12, 13, 14 was, and I guess we don't really have a policy there, but what, Bob, what you were referring to, because it talks about code enforcement officing, policing, and how the city goes about doing that, and that sort of,
Well,
the pre-inspection or the.
I think that would assist with code enforcement and might address, it does what's listed in here is that the city will engage in a proactive code enforcement policy. And I believe that a home inspection would be proactive as opposed to reactive.
So the following language of law enforcement, again, was provided as a reference, so we don't need to, unless you have any burning changes for this, we can just move on to the next table.
Yep.
I do have one thing.
Okay.
On page 4, it says maintain a code enforcement officer in the police department or in development services. Is development services is changing its name, isn't it? It's now the whatever. Shop
Yeah.
of what's happening
Well,
now?
it's-
I don't know.
Yeah, it was planning and community preservation.
So that probably should get changed.
So that has to get changed throughout
Do
the
a
whole
search and
document.
replace.
Yeah.
Search and-
Yes.
find and
Document.
replace.
Thank you. Yeah.
And we will.
Or its successors.
Yeah.
Okay. Are we ready to move on to fire?
Yes.
Okay.
Page 1. Nothing? All right. Page 2. Page 3. Think we're good. Okay. So the text section
I have, well, on page 2,
of the text?
in the text, third paragraph,
Page 2 in the text.
it references the Sierra Madre Medical Center.
Yeah.
That's Dr. Sammy's building.
When I Googled Sierra Madre Medical Center, and it doesn't come up as Dr. Sammy, and he specifically doesn't talk about anything as, he's more of a, what, really? You're gonna, the closest hospitals and medical facilities outside the high fire, okay.
Well, does he provide like urgent care, or is it just?
No, I'm not sure that,
Doctor's office.
it's a doctor's office.
Yeah.
I mean, there are other doctor's offices here as well.
Mhm.
And why would his get listed and not other doctor's offices
He's got a
that are
big
in
building.
Sierra Madre? Is there a reason for that?
He's got the green.
He's got the sign for medical marijuana sale on the front of his building. I mean, I would just think we could say various doctor's offices or something, but to pull out one doctor over another, is that appropriate?
I'm not saying it's a medical facility, not a hospital, but
The other thing is the sentence, I couldn't find Sierra Madre Medical Center, but
Yeah.
when I Googled it. The other question I have is, in the event of emergency, shelters are needed, the Hart Park Senior Center can be used in conjunction with the Congregational Church. I'm not sure that they have the facilities to be a shelter. I think shelters have to have showers and other kinds of things. That's, I think, I always thought it was the rec center, and I believe the Red Cross has it as the rec center, so. The 611 Center.
Okay.
I'm not sure you're gonna get very many people in the Park House.
well, you are now.
Yeah, well, yeah, the 200 square feet.
A window.
No, that storage room's gonna be full from what I heard.
Bunks stacked. Alright.
And
Submarine.
the last thing I had is on page 4, is that the table, it shows large historic fires in California. The list is by number of structures lost. And there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in Los Angeles. I think if you just pulled those out, and you could make an asterisk next to the ones that, I mean, the Kinaloa Station Fire and Clam Pit Fire were all impacted this community. So, I mean, of all the ways to list it, maybe by date or whatever, but by structures lost is an interesting, I'm not sure it adds to the discussion.
You prefer that it be corresponding by date?
Or corresponding just by this, Los Angeles County, because the general plan for the city of Sierra Madre should at least deal with more local
Statistics.
events.
Not include the ones elsewhere in the state.
Elsewhere.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, and I think it might be more helpful because you know, this community is threatened by more consistent large fires.
Okay.
And have there been some, I mean, there have been some since, when's the last date on this one? 2009?
Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't really matter, but.
It would, yeah, if you find it, it would shorten the list if it were just left to the LA County.
Now, the other thing is on page 6, HC 2.6. Continue to require new development to provide adequate hydrants and require that reservoirs are available to accommodate fire protection needs of new construction. Are we going to ask for reservoirs for new construction?
We're going to require it.
Are we?
Yeah, we're not only
I
going to
mean,
request.
Are we all on that sheet of music?
No, well, I don't.
Because we have some large developments that are coming along, and I just want to make sure that we're all aware that the code says that we're going to require reservoirs.
Well, I also think that reservoirs have environmental impacts of their own that can be extremely significant that could.
Just saying.
I don't know if someone, why that's in there?
Oh, I can tell you why it's in there.
Why is it in there?
Because
think
Ed
what this-
Tracy demanded it for one of the developments a long time ago, because there were no hydrants put in and there were no ways of doing fire suppression.
I can see hydrants, but, I mean, does it have to be a reservoir, or can it just be adequate water supply?
I'm bringing it up. It requires reservoirs. I think everybody ought to be.
The fire department.
So, you know, if Stonehouse goes in, I think what this is asking for is that the infrastructure precedes the construction.
But further, it's asking specific infrastructure, which may not be feasible.
Correct. So,
Require that
so,
hydrants
you know.
and require that adequate water supply available?
If I may suggest, if you'd like to change this, you could change it to basically require that developers show sufficient evidence that there is available water supplies. Perhaps that's kind of what this is alluding to, but it's not clear. That's just a suggestion. That-
Fire flow.
Pressure.
It's a fire flow issue.
Okay.
So they'll put it, just lay a 2.5-inch hose there and says you have a water supply. And it won't be at the pressure and volume that is needed to fight fire. So that's why the reservoir thing came in, because you will then store enough so that you can extinguish whatever it is that catches fire. But you could instead say that no one is going to build anything unless they've put in, the infrastructure to the satisfaction of the fire department before you start building. There's your.
Which I think is reasonable.
I think it's extremely
I
more
mean,
than
that's-
reasonable,
yeah.
given the dryness we have here.
So what is the specific language that you would like to?
I will defer to the fire chief.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'll work with you then.
But strike the part about reservoirs, I would think.
Right.
I mean,
Just saying.
Okay.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Roof, on your roof.
Okay.
That's a good one.
Did-
Okay, page 6, 7, 8.
Was that totally new, or was that the old one?
That's the most current.
But I mean, did we have it in the old one?
I don't recall. Do we have it in the 1996 general plan?
The reservoir
That reservoir requirement? Do you recall?
I want to make it sure, doesn't seem.
Yeah,
like-
we'll check that.
Okay.
We'll check
I wanna
that.
make sure, it doesn't seem like there's another curveball we're throwing at, Carter development.
Steve and I were around. They were going to make a development. Maybe it was the one Carter or before, and the previous fire chief, Ed Tracy, said, well, you have to provide sufficient fire flow because they were going to start construction and there was no infrastructure.
Yeah.
And so that became the rule, and that slowed things down.
I think it's extremely important.
Yeah, it was going to be a tank, some large tank that they were going to plunk down up there and run hoses from. Mm-hmm.
Okay, library services implementation program.
Okay.
Just going back to that question as to whether that same requirement was in the, is in the 1996 general plan. What it says is require new development to provide adequate hydrants or reservoirs to accommodate new construction. That's the current language. So.
Said or, that's the difference.
There.
And, yeah.
And then we put and in here, yeah. Mm.
Are we on to library?
Yeah.
On IM 5, it says SMHPS. I guess that's the Sierra Madre Historic Preservation Society, but it might be good to write that out in the.
In the, yeah, up ahead. I agree.
Because I, like, yeah, that's a personal rule of mine.
It says it down
It
below.
says it down below, but it should say it up above where you first read it.
Correct.
And you can reference it to the initials later on because it's just annoying.
Okay.
Is there a reason 7 and 8 aren't ganged up? Or is it?
It was just a formatting. deal.
Save a sheet of paper.
Right. But it's double-sided.
Oh.
So, but yeah, that's a formatting.
Can't win. All right. Anything on the text?
On page 15, I was just going to add the word current. The current, in the second paragraph, the current Sierra Madre Public Library was built in 1955, because I think our library is almost as old as the city. It goes back, and it's been in a number of structures.
Mm-hmm.
Second paragraph, second word. You should add the word current.
Bring it up. That probably could strike that. Yeah. You know, on the first paragraph on page 14, I think, in an effort to provide information, where it says second sentence, the library is open to the public 47 hours per week, Monday through Saturday.
This specific, isn't
it's
it?
just it is a bit specific. I think we were trying to give information, but I think this being a 20-year document, it's probably not.
Just change it to often.
Yeah.
You could say weekdays and Saturday.
The library is often open to the public.
Weekdays and Saturday and has evening hours.
Yeah.
So these things could change over 20 years, so.
Okay. We'll clean that language. Again, unless you have changes to other portions of the text, we can skip the text if you want and move to economic development, an implementation program.
I only had one question on page 6 of the verbiage.
Of the economic development section verbiage.
At the very
Only
top.
because you weren't here the last time we went through every single page.
That's good,
Now
though.
he gets his chance.
Yeah.
Okay.
L 43.2, the first one, provide enhanced paving. Is there a difference between enhanced paving and regular paving, or
Yeah,
is
one's
it extra hard, or?
one's asphalt and the others like paving.
All pedestrian crosswalks.
You know, its objective is improve the aesthetic safety and usability of the public realm. So I think it was intended there to,
Is that
Well, you've seen it.
crisscrossing that
Yeah,
they
you've
put in
seen it
there?
where sometimes they band the crosswalks with a different material versus the asphalt.
it shows up better visually.
Drive through Pasadena, they have all kinds of
Yeah, yeah.
interesting crosswalks.
It doesn't do well.
Enhanced.
Doesn't do do well in the heat, though. Okay, all right, I just didn't know what enhanced paving was.
Change in material.
No comments on the on the implementation program for economic development.
Nope. Doesn't look like it.
Tell me if I'm going too fast.
Rec services.
All right.
I have a question on, the third one, IM3 and recreation services. It lists local sports organizations. I'm just wondering if it's possible in the next 20 years there may be some other sport that comes up, or is that extremely unlikely? I mean, I just don't know.
No, that's true. It could be.
Very specific.
We don't have to
We may have to start.
include the
or
parens.
something.
Yeah.
Who
Maybe it should
knows?
say such as.
So we could put,
Including, or such as, or whatever, not limited to, something, just that in case there is some other, you know, there's another girls' league that gets started or something, you know, who
Okay.
knows?
Yeah.
Who knows what could come up?
On IM1, I just have a question. Is currently the wisteria vine come out 3 times a year, or is it twice? Like, 4 times? Oh, 3. It does. So this implementation is saying to maintain that current. I mean, why is it? Is that a goal? Is that increasing it, or is that trying to keep it the same, or is it?
let's continue.
Yeah, seems like the goal is to continue to release it, ideally, as many times as we can. I mean, you know.
Well, it's based on quarterly classes usually, so.
Yeah, well, I think it used to come out more, and wasn't it like 4 times? And it's been truncated for various reasons, so, all right.
I'm hearing that it was 4.
It was 4, I remember.
Quarterly classes, now they're 3.
Page 2.
In IM8, the city will reach out to new community cycling businesses to partner for a cycling-based event. Is there anything to look to other kind of running events? I mean,
I think
why does it have to
should
be
say- I
cycling?
don't think it should say new in that sense.
Yeah.
Were you talking about the businesses?
Yeah, 'cause, you know, in 10 years, they might not. be-
Well, long range, I mean, they are new now,
Well,
but,
yeah, but in the future, they won't be new, so I would just take the word new out of there.
C6, let me just make sure. 6.6.
Bob, are you saying to add a?
Well,
Why does it
I
have to be
think it's a good
cycling?
idea.
Well, the policy is specific. The policy reads as explore the
months.
possibility for special events involving bicycle programs.
Why is it limited to bicycles?
It doesn't have to, because the objective is provide quality recreation, leisure, and social programs and facilities for the various segments of the Sierra Madre community. We could add running.
Yeah,
Or other.
Well, you have the trail race, that's why.
yeah, the only thing we have is a trail race and they do the 4th of July 5K. But they could do other things.
So in IM 9, there's a little text thing there. Since the pool can accommodate physically
Physically
Oh, I think
challenged.
it's-
One more L.
No, not 3 L's. Needs one more. One less, right?
Oh.
Is it
right.
one?
No, I see one in the
Yeah. Physical challenge.
Oh, okay.
Physical. Oh, and then there's one missing.
Yeah, there's a one missing.
We just got to move one. There's an extra one.
Okay.
That's not right, though. Physical challenge patrons. There's something weird.
Physically?
Physically challenged patrons.
Right.
So it should both times it should be physically challenged.
Okay.
Are IM 16 and IM 17 exactly the same?
Oops.
I think they are.
They are.
Yeah, we need to like get rid of one and renumber after that.
Okay.
No, if we add the running event, oh no,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
no, no, that's just
Put it in there.
There you go. Wait, hold on. There was one here. So on IM 12, which says the city will seek to secure grants to fund replacement of park landscape with native plants, which I think is great. Is there a reason it's listed in the 2025 to 2030? I mean, why wouldn't that be something that's
Be better to have
annual or ongoing, or I don't know, it just seems, there's a reason for that? That's when the grant money is available, or?
That was done just in terms of mitigating the workload of the implementation plan, just to kind of space it out a little bit with prioritizing. But if that's something that's more of a priority item, it could be shifted up to earlier in that schedule.
Well, to me, it seems like, yeah, because that goes to sort of the whole water conservation or other, I mean, it's part and parcel of that sort of sustainable practice that I think we're trying to push, so. I mean, this is kind of slated for 10 years from now.
Is there, yeah, I just wondering if, is it necessarily native plants that there's a philosophy of wanting it to be native plants, or is it low water use that we're looking for? I'm just curious what the background.
Let me see. I'll look at the.
Was.
Or the policy.
What the policy is.
The native, yeah, native plants tend to be low water use.
But I mean,
But let me look at the.
Install and replace existing landscape with native and drought-resistant plants in city parks where.
Perhaps we need to add that.
Yeah.
Where deterioration has occurred.
Yeah, because there's lots of non-native plants that are also useful in that way. Having just been in the
Okay.
desert garden at the Huntington Library today.
Oh, yeah.
I know.
And it's beautiful.
Yeah.
I would think that would be something, anything that would be sort of water or conservation related or sustainable would want to move
Yeah.
as a priority item.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can move that up.
I mean, on the
Or it could be
priority
ongoing.
list.
Just ongoing.
Could be ongoing.
Could be ongoing, but it needs,
It probably should be ongoing.
yeah.
Okay.
Is there any Anything else there?
Read this anymore.
I have one thing. You can take a look. Page 12 in the verbiage. C10-3. Maintain the Jones Peak Trail connection, providing access from Bailey Canyon to Mount Wilson Trail. The connection provides the city with an additional outdoor recreation. I'm a little puzzled by this because actually I will be involved this weekend with doing that. A bunch of volunteers are going up there, but we have been told that the city doesn't want to have any part of that, and we cannot be mentioned on any. So the city on one hand is saying that we don't want to know you and we don't want to have anything to do with you, but yet it
Right.
appears in this document.
Right. This actually, 10.3 actually should be stricken out. And actually, that's what we did in the implementation. Under IM 30, you will see a reference to policy C10.3. And what should have been done here is actually, we should have stricken this out and just moved the numbers. So the new 10.3 is what you see here as 10.4 in the language. Expand funds for park acquisition. That actually becomes the new 10.3. So what you see there is 10.3 that refers to maintenance of the Jones Peak Trail actually should be stricken out of the general plan as a policy.
So that's
Exactly for that reason. It's just not something the city will be involved in.
And the city doesn't see the benefit of people that come here, the hundreds of people that come every weekend to the town to use the trails and on both the Mount Wilson Trail side and the Bailey Canyon side?
Yes, I'll defer to Alyssa on that one.
Okay.
We love our trails and we love how much it brings people into town. Unfortunately, being a wilderness area, if we start to maintain it, we are then liable anytime somebody gets hurt. And so by keeping it an unmaintained trail, the city is not liable if somebody falls down, if somebody falls off the mountain for any of those reasons. And so it's been a longstanding policy that the trails are unmaintained.
Hard to have an asset that you don't maintain.
It's a big catch-22.
Now, there are specific immunities in place for natural settings, and you can take advantage of those, which you lose that immunity if you start maintaining it, grooming it, et cetera. So that's unfortunately, so the city doesn't.
The Forest Service has standards. The Forest Service has people that do it all over the forest. So, okay.
It's ironclad.
Hmm?
That's a tough one. All right. Are we on, where are we? Community cultural and special events implementation program. IM4 there, the city will continue the coordinating council quarterly meetings. I think
Spelling.
quarterly.
Right. I did notice too on IM6, the city will publish the Wisteria Vine community newsletter
Again?
3 times a year.
Yeah, isn't that the same?
You probably don't need to put it. It's repeated.
This is a different version.
Is that costly to produce that newsletter? Do we have evidence that people want it printed as opposed to want it online?
Yeah, what
We have
kind-
no evidence. So we know that it's a cost, but we don't think that people want it. So why do we do it? I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, we do think people want it.
Print it as opposed to online. So it's worth, we think it's worth the cost.
Yeah, I want it.
It's worth the cost, but it's one about low-hanging fruit on the budget top list.
It's something that you guys are looking at. Okay.
I like it printed.
You do?
Do you get sponsorships that underwrites any of that? You do not. Do you ever seek sponsorship that underwrites that? Can you seek sponsorship that underwrites it?
We used to have sponsorship that underwrote it. The Community Services Commission made a decision to stop doing that because they felt that it was becoming more of an ad than it was becoming. But that was the Community Services Commission 10 plus years ago, so it doesn't mean it's not something that could be looked at again.
Anyway, it's just something that you guys are looking at it obviously as a budget issue.
What's IM 7? The city will continue to use the use of Channel 98 to broadcast cultural programming. Is that Channel 98
I was gonna say,
for Time Warner, for?
Well, I'm wondering if that channel
Is
could
that a
change
close-
to a different number.
It changes all the time, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I,
We just got a new channel lineup, so,
so
Take the number
I
out.
think to take the number out.
on a channel.
Community access channel.
The cable community.
The
access.
community education access, well, it's, I'm sorry, public, government. No, it's a, PEG is the channels, you can get up to 3, public, education, and government. We have education and government. We don't have public, public
That's on-
access.
That's on cable, right?
That's on cable. And it's, it doesn't matter.
What?
As I say, they go back and forth with the state. Now that the state has the franchises, we aren't as protected in necessarily having those channels ongoing. We've done everything we can to protect ourselves to have them, but we could lose them, especially 98.
Like lose them completely or moved?
Both.
Oh.
Yeah.
So we say the city will continue use of.
I would say government education channels.
Okay.
It's not something that's going to be overseen by human resources either. I'm not quite sure where we put it, but we can figure that out. And
That is
let you know.
weird. Like community services. No, IM8, that's your fate here.
Yeah. Ken, anything on IM8 Goldstein policy?
Okay.
It's okay?
I've said my piece.
Not for the record, but yeah. All right. Anything else here? 10 through 13? Or in the text?
I have something in the text.
Go for it.
Page 26. In the, under winter holidays, it talks about Santa also visit the community on December 24th and distribute stockings to local children in events sponsored by, it says the Sierra Madre Fire Department. It should be read the Sierra Madre Firefighters Association. Likewise, under Firefighters Dance, an annual fundraiser for the Sierra Madre Volunteer Firefighters Association, SMVFA, is held on the second Saturday. The fire department is the government agency, and the association is the benevolent agency.
Okay. It's true. Anything else on the text?
Transit services? the text, too?
I have one thing in the text. Page 32, the very top. It speaks about maintaining existing bus routes linking the city to the Gold Line train station in Pasadena. I would add the word, add Arcadia, because that station is about to open as well. And it may be closer to some sections of the town, so it might be easier.
Where's the one in Arcadia going to be?
Right next to REI, off St. Joseph.
Yeah, yeah.
Actually, the tracks go there now, so. They've got a parking structure and everything.
I think we're shutting down our off-ramp for a
Public
year.
service.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Public services implementation.
Yep.
Okay. There's two.
Anything in the text? Nope. Oh, there's a highlighted
Just to
section.
bring your attention to added language also in the text, in the actual section, and it's highlighted. And that's
35.
the added language for water conservation.
Yeah, so you'll see on page, beginning on page 35,
Right.
36.
Was this the text we were kicking around last time, or is this different?
It's new text. You had seen this section, but you've seen it before we had water conservation policies. So now we're adding this.
But we had seen some section prior where we were inserting in sort of this boilerplate water conservation.
That was in the land use.
Okay, so is this?
This is new. This
This
new
is-
highlighted text is.
Yeah, but this is specific to this, or is it the same sort of language that we used over there?
It's different.
It's different.
Related to public services. But it's in the same subject of water conservation.
Should there be any mention made that the city will pursue additional regulations to conserve water?
Well, that would be the implementation, right?
As part of their regulatory? So, you know,
Was that
I think
imp-
something of is demanding irrigation systems that can sense the need for water. And make that part of our building code. And pursue other kinds of,
Is that part of IM1 though, or no?
Part of something else.
could be part of something else. I just want to make sure that we leave the door open for us to set some standards.
Well, if this is public services, is that resource management, or, I mean, what's that, what
Yeah.
section
Or
does
is that under,
fall
or is that under building?
Yeah, I'm not certain if that, where would that go? Most rationally.
Well, it says, the IM1, the city shall review and amend as necessary titles 15, which is buildings and
building, yeah.
construction, 16, subdivisions, and 17, zoning of the municipal code. So that covers the whole breadth of
Yeah.
construction. To require that all proposed development be provided with adequate water, sewage, drainage, electrical, and telecommunications to meet the demands of the project.
But it doesn't say conservation, you know what I mean? Maybe you could add, you know, meet the demands of the project and conserve, and while conserving resources. I don't know.
Well, I actually think that would be a separate thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
because I think this one, I don't know, the way I read it, and I read it somewhere else, I'm not sure if it's sort of like neutral.
There is a
Development
conservation,
neutral.
water conservation section.
Yeah, that talks
here.
about it there.
But I didn't know whether it was more appropriate in this section or in that
Probably
section.
in that one.
And the other one.
Okay.
No issues with the highlighted.
So yeah, just a highlight. So there's 35, 36, and then on page 39, you have 2 policies added. Require that new development capture for percolation on site the maximum practical amount of stormwater. And C31.6.
Wait, okay, hold on.
Provide for the modification of existing drainage systems to capture the percolation, the maximum practical amount of water.
Mm-hmm.
But that, okay, so I'm trying to, you have that coupled into your implementation 1, right?
Right.
But I don't know, to me, 1, so that is sort of conservation. To me, that's conservation. You're trying to keep water on site instead of running it off, which is kind of the current thing to do. But in IM1, it's that all proposals are provided with adequate, it's a supply and use issue. The other one's conservation, so. Because you would roll out an implementation that would address
Conservation.
that, like, okay, so you want to percolate water, so you're gonna have semi-permeable paving, you're gonna
Right.
do rain barrels, or you're gonna do, whatever, planters that collect water and percolate.
Mhm.
There's like,
I need a
you're gonna
number
implement
of-
it in that way, rather than this implement 1, which really is about, we're gonna look at the development to see how it's basically meeting its own demands.
Mhm.
That's kind of a different thing. I don't know, maybe not, but.
Well, this is also to stop the stormwater.
Stormwater.
Yeah, for that. So,
So you see that the policy is referenced in that measure.
let's see.
1.5.
The only question I have is on the next page on 40, the last one.
Okay.
Maintain a disaster plan that provides emergency information on government access television in the event of a disaster. Kind of assumes that everyone has cable and there's electricity. But I guess,
It's one way of getting to people.
I think that there are some other ways to inform the public that don't require either electricity or cable television. So
Bullhorns?
we have a Nixle system, I think, that they have, so that you can, I would put in there that something that makes sure that all the residents are aware of the Nixle system, because that should work if the power is out in Sierra Madre.
What is that?
It's a text notification system, so that they can send out a text message to everybody that, the creek is rising, or I think they did one a couple weeks ago about a murder or something in the area. Yeah, an Amber Alert. so-
Schools do it too.
Is it the sheriffs and the sheriff's?
Sheriffs has one, LAPD has one, but Sierra Madre has one, and it's a pretty cost-effective way of making sure you reach out to everyone. But they have to give you their phone number.
When was the last time that horn probably went off?
I do know that. The last time that horn went off was yesterday? Yesterday.
Oh, really?
At 2 o'clock.
Yesterday.
I wasn't here.
It went off twice. And the reason that horn is the way it is because that in the very, very beginning, there was a siren. And the siren only worked if the electricity was on. And after certain events, there was no electricity, so you couldn't summon the fire department, or you couldn't warn the citizens. So the only way to store energy in order to have an alerting device was they had a compressor with a giant tank of air. So even if the power was out, somebody could pull and it used to be in the the tower in the old fire station at 55 West, and, you know, we would hang hoses there, and we would convince some probie that that was the light switch, and he'd pull on it, and there'd be a big horn, and then we'd fine him and stuff like that. So. and then we moved here, and the horn stayed there, and there was a timer, and the fire department was still over there because they moved the city hall first. So every day at noon they would test the horn, but they had 2 sets of wires that came over, and so every day at noon the fire door would open because they connected the wrong set of wires. So, you know, it's like, well, why was that? So they got it nailed down now. So.
Gee, and I thought they put it for the invasion of the body snatchers.
It's at the very end of the movie. Yeah.
That's good. All right. Air quality.
Next one on,
Oh, you're gonna say.
oh no, on air quality.
Oh, okay.
Something, oh yeah, on IM 9. I think there's something missing at the end of that sentence.
IM2 and IM3 don't have checkboxes.
Oh, yeah. And 3. Is that what you
Good.
said, 2 and 3?
No, I said
Good
2
call.
and 3.
Good catch.
Okay.
The city shall continue to provide the fixed route local transportation services and provide increase.
Let me see, what is that?
This is
Which one
IM
was it?
9.
Oh,
IM 9.
R23-6.
Probably one of those things like it's an Excel column.
And as the policy here is provide and enhance local transit service to reduce personal vehicle trips. So the city shall continue to provide the fixed route local transportation needs and provide
Increase.
increased.
I don't know. I don't know what you're getting at there
Fees.
exactly, but. Yeah, I think the box got too small. Yeah. But something dropped out there.
Okay.
Provide increase is gonna be a tough sentence to finish.
Increase of what? Fee?
It's gonna be a.
Cost.
Anyway, back up a couple. You got no checkboxes in 2 and 3.
Okay.
I'm presuming they're gonna be ongoing.
Yeah, they should be. They should be ongoing. State requirements. Yeah, that's ongoing.
Okay.
IM12? When is that ever enforced? Man, I'd
Not
love
my
to see those
street.
things go away.
We have an implementation policy to remove the.
Remove gas-powered lawn equipment, yeah, man.
I just thought that was.
Who does that? Is that a code officer job?
Let's see here.
Code enforcement?
For the timing?
Does the code enforcement have a device to measure sound?
We have sound devices, yeah, sound monitoring. The policy reads on AR 24.1. Continue to review guidelines from time to time regarding the use of gas-powered lawn equipment and consider tightening the restrictions on the type of equipment, hours, and duration of operation.
Generally, daylight is a good time, but.
Right.
When I'm not home.
6 a.m.
Maybe when the grass isn't really wet.
All right. Anything in the text? No. All right.
No?
We're good. Tree preservation and implementation program. Anything in the text? Okay. 14,
This is
page
shall
14?
continue.
Oh, no, oh, you're looking at 14.
Are we, oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Regulations pertaining to fugitive dust control.
Wait. Where's that?
I am 14 on the air quality.
Oh, here.
This fugitive dust.
It's escaped. It's run away.
It's going off your own property onto and chasing someone else out of town. You could just see it, can't you?
Creative
Dust
use,
in the shape
creative
of
use of language.
I think we saw at the end of the previous hearing.
Is that part of the FRC?
Fugitive dust.
It's like what the Roadrunner leaves.
Are we good with air quality?
I think we are, yeah.
What's better use?
Flood, landslide implementation. Anything in the text?
Yeah, in flood. On page 14, I just have a question. In the text, the locations of the flood control basins, the city has one, the Floral Basin, and the rest are county flood control, but the east end of the town, especially in Stonehouse Canyon, there is no flood control. And HC 6.1 requires that all new development incorporate sufficient measures to mitigate flood hazards, including design of containment systems to capture stormwater runoff. And if there's going to be development over there,
Well, I think
There was a river basin.
There was a proposal to.
When we saw it, there was a
capture the
river basin and there was a,
there is a river basin. It was installed by the Heflins, and they created a little river there with a pump and everything. But I'm talking about.
No, but I think the new development, when they
It would have
came
to
with the
have-
master
It would
plan,
have a-
they
it was in there.
It would have a.
they had a
catch-
basin at the top.
And is it sufficient?
Well, that was a planning.
It would be part of its review and
Okay.
county,
County would have to sign off on it?
Yeah.
correct.
Okay.
It had a pond, right?
That was
It
at the
had
base.
two, it had a
Had
top
two
and a bottom, and there was
collecting
a
it.
settling, and then there was a reservoir below it for overflow.
Okay. Because it's an area where we haven't mitigated with other flood control, options, and it's, if it's going to get developed, or if we don't want to expose the city to a lot of liabilities because we can't dig all those homes out.
You could turn the pump back on up there.
If it ever what's again? What's that?
Fugitive rain.
They used to pay for water. They used to have water trucked in for that stream.
Water Resources Implementation Program, here we go.
So maybe in IM2, by enforcing existing water conservation regulations and developing new ones?
Yeah.
Need to see that. One. Three, 15.4. Yeah, that's entirely appropriate. say by enforcing existing and implementing.
And developing new ones,
And
or
developing-
implementing new ones.
Implementing new water conservation regulations.
Mhm.
Okay.
All right. So to the text, unless there's anything on the implementation.
Yeah, so here again is where the highlighted text on page 15 is new.
Same text.
Same text, it is. And then on page 21, there's 3 new policies added.
Sounds good.
Okay. I think we're close to the end here.
There's one on 22, right?
Yeah, one on 22, explore other methods or innovations to conserve water during times of drought and implement as necessary.
Nothing?
Waste management, recycling. This will be your last section.
Here's the chart
What chart?
for the last section.
Should be there. Section 6, right above that.
Yeah, there's not one at the end. This one, that's the last one.
Yeah, it's one page.
Yeah.
All right. Anything there?
Okay.
Okay, the text. There's nothing new there.
Nothing new.
Sure.
All right.
Okay, thank you very much. You'll have more coming next month, but we're really getting some good speed on having your review of the implementation program. We'll have more on your November 6th meeting. We also hope on November 6th, there were, you had looked at the land use designation map, you recall. You generally approved the, what you had done was, as the General Plan Steering Committee did, is you reconciled the differences between the current zoning and the land use map, and you generally agreed with that cleanup. You did have some questions that staff will come back to you on, are on some of the areas that were designated RH, which is the hillside, and what was the rationale for changing that from single-family to residential hillside?
I think there were some questions about some of the reconciliation parts too. I had some.
Right, and we'll, there were a few, but
I wanted
Leticia and I will,
I wanted to.
right, were there other ones besides the hillside ones?
There were a few, because I remember there were a few that, I mean, I think that I had some questions about. when we
Okay.
looked at it before.
We'll go over that, and then
Look at it
we'll,
one more time.
you know, and we'll, a lot was just the characteristics of those lots, whether, you know, those parcels and their
I mean,
adjacency.
Some of them, I think, were changed because of the current, they had a current non-conforming use.
Mhm.
And so they changed it to that, but I didn't think that was necessarily the thing we wanted to do on some of those.
Okay.
Just because it has a non-conforming use, we may not want that to be the actual use if you think about it in a rational way rather than just a what is there now kind of way.
So some of it was location too, just they were different than kind of what was
Yeah.
contiguous, so.
Okay.
And I know we were supposed to bring back the threshold for, to come before the commission?
Yes.
Are we gonna,
Right.
is
Oh,
that
yeah.
coming
That's
up?
coming on October 16th,
Yeah.
Okay.
right, for discussion.
Awesome.
So, the city council is having a special meeting on October 7th. They're beginning the land use section review, the corresponding implementation plan, as well as water resources. So that's sort of first on their review. So if you kind of look at it, it's being handed off now to council to look at their final review. And then we're going to be feeding them, and additional special meetings are going to have, I think, in November and December. They're going to start finalizing the text of the general plan.
Okay.
So
And we're on target still for our review?
we are, you know, yeah, we're going until the end of the year with review. We hope to get everything to you and completed, so you're done, but we'll see how progress is.
And we'll have nothing to do.
Yeah, of course.
But more projects.
Go to once a month. All right.
But we are very close to the end of your review of the general plan, which is a milestone.
I'll say.
I'll miss it.
Yeah, right.
Carter was the milestone.
Well, it's not done yet, but, all right, oral communication, audience. This is an additional opportunity for any person to address the planning commission on any item that's not on the agenda. Not seeing anyone rushing to the podium yet. We will close audience oral communication and bring it back to the planning commission. Anything?
I will attempt to explain what was explained to me on the break about the potential reason why some of the content didn't appear on the video for the people who asked in the opening. And I may get this wrong, but this is what I believe was explained to me, that there is a certain amount of bandwidth that flows out of here and that we transmit the file real time to YouTube while we are sitting here. And if we have a dropout in bandwidth while we're transmitting that file, then some of the comments may be dropped and not uploaded in the real-time file. No one is editing that file. There's nothing nefarious going on. We simply lose bandwidth, as is the case based on what we purchase and what we can afford to purchase. Following that, 72 hours later, a DVD is walked over or driven over to the provider, which I believe is KGEM, uploaded to their servers, and then you get a clean download. So theoretically, if something is missing in the 72-hour window from the time it's recorded till the time you see it, there may be a drop out there, but after 72 hours, you should have a clean file on the archive permanently, and the city manager is nodding, so I probably got that right. Secondarily, if you're having problems here watching the transmission, it's because there's a limited amount of bandwidth and it's being consumed by the many people in the room who are all doing various things on the internet while they're participating in the meeting. And if you're trying to get that feed that I just described, you may not get it. And it all comes back to cost, and if we wish to increase those costs, that's something that the City Council can take up in its budget discussion if they wish to provide better services, audio-visual or bandwidth or otherwise. It can be considered as a cost to be increased or decreased. And I'm getting nods in the back, so I got most of that right.
Not too bad.
Very good.
Even I understood that.
Yes.
Well done. All right, anyone else? Good. All right. Planning and Community Preservation staff. That's a lot. That's a mouthful, huh?
No, your next meeting is October 16th, and we do have a number of public hearing items for that meeting, including continued items, yeah. So, yeah, which includes the 3,000 consideration of lowering the threshold to 3,000 square feet. So,
Or whatever.
Or whatever.
or some number.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it.
I don't know how difficult this information is to get about the city, but on that issue, do we know the distribution of lot sizes in Sierra Madre? Of like housing sizes?
No, we don't have an inventory.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't be very difficult to compile one. It's
Yeah, is that
public
a-
information.
Is that a piece of data that we could have? It'd be very helpful.
County tax assessor knows, he sends you a bill.
Well, the assessors,
Yeah,
you
but
can
you
go
have to-
parcel by parcel. and-
Some
I'm
of
just
them
saying is
spend
that
a long
it's-
time doing it.
But it's,
I mean,
it's
it gives
public
you the data,
information.
how
We
big
used to
the
get discs from the assessor's office because we'd use them in the fire department to do all kinds of, who owns this piece of property, because we'd send them, when we didn't do brush clearance and
I mean,
things like that.
It's in a database.
We'll
it
look
can be
into
sorted.
if there's any kind of database that can
That you could
compile
get
it.
That wouldn't take 1,000 hours for someone to go
Shouldn't
through.
take very long at
doesn't.
all.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has to be, if they're generating your bills out of a database, then there's a database that can be
Because it would be
sorted by any
interesting
parameter.
information in that
Right.
discussion to know.
How big is the average lot?
We can tell you that the
Well,
majority
not
of,
the lot, but the house, the actual housing
I
size.
can tell you that the majority of homes that we're reviewing, that are under plan check, that do not come before you,
Mhm.
are homes that are 3,000 square feet or greater.
Mhm.
The majority of like remodels,
But I mean
additions.
the
what size
existing
lot?
houses, the existing houses,
It's all
Right.
about the lot coverage.
Lot coverage too.
Well, when you guys generate like block lists that show like, our subject site is X and the houses around it there's a list with the addresses and it kind of delineates
Right.
that.
It's,
How are you producing that just by?
No, there's, well, the applicant's required to have a mapping agency provide.
Set the radius?
Right.
So we go one by one. We go to the assessor's website.
And
Oh,
look
you
them
do,
up
so
one
it's
at a
by
time.
hand kind
One
of.
by one. Yeah.
Right.
But do you have any of that data, like what you've done for?
All these other projects, do you keep that data?
Like,
Does
so
it accumulate into one big database, or is it, no, that's too bad? Because, when we go out, when you give us the address of the development, we go out and we look at that, and then we look at the other houses, and we say, well, if they're all big, then, but that's not kind of a subjective and very non-scientific way of
Yeah.
assessing it.
You don't really have a big closet over that's got all that information.
No.
Sounds like a
Yeah.
sub-project for the.
For the,
I think that could be an
Well,
enormous
the-
project to kind of collate that information and get it, but it would be extremely interesting to see what it.
something for the GIS system.
I just did a PSA today that there's a teen docent history program here in Sierra Madre, so
There
we
is?
could give it to the teen docents, and I'm sure they could parse that information.
You know what? They could probably do a really good job.
Technically savvy to.
3,000 homes, guys. It's not the biggest project in the world. They're gonna have bigger projects later in life.
Yeah.
Yeah.